Chapter 2379. Being pampered. The underground tunnel was about 100 meters deep into the surface of the earth. The entire passage was dark and moist. The walls were not evenly scrapped, and the group believed that the passage was created when a giant creature made its way through the ground. Occasionally, there would be some pools of mud on the ground, which was something very commonly found in an underground cave. Gu Shijie was still taking the lead at that point. Out of curiosity, she would walk closely to the walls of the cave and take a closer look. Difui followed her. "What have you found?" he asked. "This place has been abandoned for a long time, at least 10 years. "What else?" "The passage must have been created by some giant beast, perhaps an underground dragon. There is no sign of human activity involved in the making of it." "What do you think?" "I think that something is not quite right about this cave. I have never heard about such a gigantic beast in the poisonous swamp." Difui sighed. "Neither have I. Due to the lack of human involvement here in the swamp, it is normal that some unknown beasts still exist." She nodded in agreement without saying anything. To be honest, she did not have much faith in Yin Qingluo, as she believed that Yin Qingluo must still be planning something big and evil. At the moment, she had not figured it out. She could only hope that Difui had really convinced Yin Qingluo. After all, Yin Qingluo was really obsessed with Difui and would listen to everything that he said, which was why she was here in the poisonous swamp with him, though it was against her will. The team continued walking deeper into the passage. It was a rather peaceful walk without many obstacles. Sometimes they would run into poisonous beasts that were accidentally trapped in the cave, but the beasts did not pose any great threat. Difui could always finish them off easily. The dangers posed in the cave were significantly lower than that of the swamp. The escorts were relieved. The safety of the princess had always been their greatest responsibility ever since they left the palace. It was a rather exhausting task, especially in this poisonous swamp where every encounter was a fight. There was hardly any time for them to catch their breaths or take a rest. The underground passage was the first time that they could catch a breath. The two escorts continued their journey next to Yin Qingluo, who was in the middle. She was very particular with hygienic issues and would not let anyone touch her, so they dared not get too close, for fear that she would be disgusted. They knew a little about the prolonged and bitter quarrel between Princess Yuanyuan and Gu Shijie. Also, they were aware of the prince's affection for the Devil King. They also knew that Difui treated her as his sister because he was not interested in anything intimate. They also knew that Princess Yuanyuan was punished by the Devil King for what she had done to Gu Shijie, so they actually thought that she would not be able to leave her bed for at least a month. To their surprise, she was with them in the swamp after only a few days. The two men did not know the feud that existed between the rest of the people. It was obvious that the Devil King had treated the princess and Gu Shijie very differently. He obviously fancied the latter. They noticed that Princess Yuanyuan did not have much strength left. Her spiritual power was only slightly better than an ordinary mortal. In the heart of this poisonous swamp, her life was at the greatest risk, like an egg with a cracked shell that could be destroyed anytime. Yin Qingluo knew how to manipulate people. She used to be really kind to all of Difui's courtiers, and would send them some gifts every now and then, so the courtiers were quite friendly with her. Difui used to pamper her all the time, so the courtiers treated her the same. They would do or give her anything that she asked for. That explained why she was able to get the universal net so easily. As for now, they could tell that the princess was unusually quiet. She did not talk much like the way that she used to. Chapter 2380. Being pampered too. As for now, they could tell that the princess was unusually quiet. She did not talk much like the way she used to do. Her complexion was as pale as a sheet, so they could not help but sympathize with her. Men were born with a natural instinct to protect the weak. The two escorts saw how vulnerable the princess was and felt drawn to protect her. At times, they would try to do as she asked, just to make her feel better. They took a look at the Devil King and Gu Shijie, who were walking side by side with one another. Then they looked to Yin Qingluo, who was so weak that she looked as though she would tumble down the passage at any time. They were sad for her. One of them, whose name was Hua Qianjun, was more emotionally affected than the other guard. Hua Qianjun knew a lot about the use of poisons. Also, he possessed great kung fu, so he ended up becoming one of the closest men that fought alongside Difui. He was very loyal to his king. He had feelings for the princess and was her secret admirer. He had never expressed his affections for her before. Often, he took care of her needs without others knowing, just to make her life better. He knew how determined the princess was during this trip. She must be fatigued but insisted on keeping in line and walking alone without any help. She walked with her head up, but it hurt him just to see her acting so strong. When he saw Gu Shijio stomping on Difui's shoe before, he was quite surprised that Difui was not concerned about his dirted shoe and was, on the contrary, quite happy about it. Their conversation continued in laughter. Difui had even placed his hand on Gu Zijia's waist. Hua Qianjun heaved a heavy sigh. He knew the Devil King very well. Difui was obsessed with hygiene and was reluctant to have anyone getting too close to him, especially women. Although he was kind to the princess, it was only in the form of material comfort. He had never gotten too close to her. Princess Yuanyuan tried to get his attention by holding on to his arm, but all of her attempts ended with the same rejection. At one point in time, the courtiers actually thought that the Devil King had a different sexual orientation. But later, they realized that he was not interested in men either. Therefore, they assumed that the Devil King was actually born without any emotions or need for intimacy. Even if he got married to a woman, they believed that he would hardly spend any time with her. The only way that he would treat the Devil Queen was with respect and proper distance. Seeing the Devil King's change of attitude when Gu Shijio was around had changed their minds. The Devil King had never been so close and so playful with any other woman. He seemed always to want to have physical contact with her. The Devil King was clearly in love. None of his restrictions and conditions applied to her. Hence, the prince's affection was destined to be unreturned. Other than sympathizing with the princess, he was actually feeling quite hopeful for himself. "Princess, are you hungry? I have fruit," he offered while handing her the fruit. The fruit was a celestial fruit. It was a gift by Difui as a reward for his contributions. The fruit tasted good and had the ability to strengthen one's spiritual power. He had been keeping it for a long time and decided to give it away to Yun Qingluo. Surprised, Yun Qingluo gazed at him with her watery eyes that were clouded with tears. His heart skipped a beat as soon as he noticed the hopelessness that she could barely hide. She shook her head and said politely, "Thank you, but I am not hungry." Her voice was trembling, but she tried hard to resist the urge to cry. Under her mask, he could see her lips that were pursed tightly into a thin line. Her pale face contained almost no colors at all. Hua Qianjun could not help but comfort her. "Princess, actually, there are still plenty of men out there." Yin Qingluo gave him a tight smile and answered, I know." She must be crying. Tears started to stain the layer of thin gauze on her face. She tried to wipe the tears that kept flowing out from her eyes. Then, she turned around to hide her embarrassment from Hua Qianjun. Hua Qianjun's heart ached for her, but he did not know how to make her feel better. All he could do was to stay close to support her and keep her safe. "Are you tired? Can I give you a hand with anything?" "Thank you, but there is no need," she responded with a smile. She was finally able to control her emotions. The more she tried to look happy, the more he sympathized with her. They kept their voices very low, so the rest of the team could barely hear anything from their conversation. The sounds of wind and running water in the cave made their voices almost inaudible. Difui, who was still leading the way, suddenly smiled and shook his head. Gu Shijia was busy checking the source of the running water when she caught Difui smiling. "What are you smiling at?" she asked. Difui waved his sleeve and proudly said, "Don't you think I look better when I smile?" Gu Shijia remained silent. She decided to pretend as if she never asked. The journey had been quite pleasant so far, and about 2 hours later, they finally arrived at the deepest part of the swamp. The land was very spacious, almost as vast as the size of a football field. The gigantic beast must have spent some time here, rolling and wandering around before making its exit. There was a pathway that could lead them back up to the surface. They could not see the end, but could hear the sound of the beasts growling from above. Right above is the nest of the silver ring crocodiles. "Should I go by myself to lure the crocodile here?" or are you coming with me? She gazed at Di Fui intensely. Without hesitating, Di Fui answered, I will go with you. Let's go. Yin Qingluo acknowledged his response with a firm nod. Di Fui proceeded to give one of his guards an order. You will proceed with the princess. Then he looked at Hua Qianjun and said, You will stay behind with Miss Gu and Mr. Zhu. Hua Qianjun decided to oppose. Your Highness, my knowledge in the use of poisons is definitely better than Brother Jean's. Let me go up there with you and let Brother Jean stay behind. Di Fui answered with a tight smile. Are you trying to go against my command? A simple reply was able to make Hua Qianjun feel completely hopeless. My apologies, Your Highness. I shall do as told. Di Fui glared at him. He wanted to say something else but decided against it. Gu Shizhou suddenly offered. I should go with you so that we can take care of each other. She could use her teleportation skill if anything went wrong, and get all of them to safety in time. Di Fui disagreed. No, you should stay here and wait for the upcoming attack. 3 of us are more than enough to lure the crocodile. Despite some hesitation, Gu Shizhou decided to do as planned. Upon reaching the surface, the 3 of them confirmed that it was really the nest of the silver ring crocodiles. Many crocodiles of varying sizes were submerged in red mud, revealing only the surface of their heads that were slightly above water. These creatures had the face of a crocodile, but the body of a hippopotamus. They were easily the size of an elephant. If all of them moved simultaneously, the ground would undoubtedly tremor. As soon as the 3 people from the group were visible, the crocodiles were immediately drawn to them. Their emerald eyes gazed at them while they cautiously approached. The 3 team members could easily ascertain that these poisonous beasts ruled the entire swamp. They possessed an intimidating aura that prevented any other creature from getting close. Find authorized novels in Webnovel Faster Updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. The guard who accompanied them, Jean, was an experienced fighter but was still anxious about the crocodiles. However, Yin Qingluo did not seem to be afraid at all. She stood confidently next to Di Fui. Brother, are you sure that you will not regret any of this? Are you that cold-blooded to risk my life to get the cure? She asked while locking her eyes on him. Di Fui did not hesitate at all when he responded. This is your only chance of redemption. Yin Qingluo closed her eyes and murmured, I may die after drawing blood from my heart. Chapter 2382. This woman is crazy. Brother Jean was stunned by her statement. Did Di Fui intend to extract blood from the heart of the princess? He looked at Di Fui silently, trying to assess the situation. Di Fui seemed calm. You can extract your blood normally. I will protect you. When he was talking, there were already 7 or 8 silver ring crocodiles rushing toward their direction. The shrieking sounds were frightening. These crocodiles were massive in size, but as agile as wolves. They appeared to be able to fly from their blood-red wings that emerged from their bodies. Di Fui leaped to higher ground and faced them head-on as he said, You won't have much time left to live. Then a battle ensued. Colorful lights shone around them, which made it appear as though the clouds were turbulent. Yin Qingluo looked up at him for a moment. That purple shadow that was dashing around the place was someone that she had tried very hard to get close to over the past year. It seemed as though she was shortchanged, however. When he had questioned her about the cure, he was dressed as Celestial Master Zhua. Being too captivated, she blurted out the truth without a second thought. However, the man changed back into his black attire right after she answered him. She thought that he was wearing it to make her happy so that she was more willing to draw blood from her heart. But over time, she realized that it was all for Gu Shizhou. She raised her hand and pulled out an icy-looking thin blade. There was a tube with a thick silver needle on the back of the knife. This knife would only release the blood from her heart if it were angled into the heart correctly. If the blade were used appropriately, there would not be any damage to the individual's body or circulatory system. Unsurprisingly, the blade was a gift to her from Di Fui. He said that this was the utmost compassion that he could show her. Perhaps, it was true that a man's heart was cold and ruthless. He could disregard the life of his savior without a second thought, just for another woman. It was unfortunate for Yuanyu and that her heart still longed for him despite all these circumstances. She untied her robes, revealing most of her chest. Guardian Jean was standing next to her, and he quickly moved his eyes away and turned his body slightly. This was the best angle that he could position himself in order to protect her and not look at her. Difui! Yin Qingluo suddenly screamed. Her voice was sharp and fierce. It startled Guardian Jean, and the sword in his hand almost fell to the ground. In the sky, Difui was busy holding off the crocodiles. He thought that she was in danger, and finally looked at her from above. He saw her chest exposed even through the red mist. He frowned. Here the poisonous mist was still potent. Once an individual's skin was exposed, it would be eroded by the toxic fog. Therefore, Difui specially requested Zhu Duqing to make a small alteration to the clothes worn by Yin Qingluo. At the left chest position of the clothes, there was an alteration to allow a thin knife to enter and exit. It was usually tightly sealed but could be adjusted. In order to take the blood from her heart, Yin Qingluo only needed to open a small part of her suit without exposing her skin. However, Yin Qingluo was probably out of her mind right now. She had removed the entire suit. Was she looking for death? Did she want to commit suicide here, so that Gu Shijie would have to die together with her? This woman was crazy. Difui's eyes darkened. He had just attacked a crocodile, and was about to go to Yin Qingluo to try to stop her. He could see that the knife he gave her was already inserted into her body. Although it had penetrated her skin, there was no blood on the surface. However, one could see a trail of blood dripping from the knife, and into Yin Qingluo's palm. She pulled the knife out once she drew enough blood to fill a bottle of wine. Chapter 2383. Difui, you didn't keep your promise. This knife was specially made, and the blade had a strong hemostasis effect. After the knife was pulled out, her wound did not release any drops of blood. However, even though there was no blood on the surface, her heart was injured. When the knife was pulled out, her body suddenly swayed. It was apparent that she was really pale too. Guardian Jean, who stood next to her, quickly held on to her. Once she regained consciousness, she suddenly pushed Guardian Jean away. She held the bag of blood in her hand and looked up at Difui. I fulfilled your wish. She poured the blood on her hand, and it rolled down all the way to her foot. The smell of her blood filled the air, and there was a low roar in the depths of the blood pond. A slight tremor could be felt at that very moment. On the surface of the pond, a wave of more than 10 feet tall was visible. From beneath it, a crocodile suddenly showed its giant head. The crocodiles in the vicinity bowed down as if they just saw their king. The beast was more than 10 times larger than the surrounding crocodiles. Its head was the size of a big hill, and its pair of eyes looked like 2 green lanterns. However, its body was not as colorful as the other crocodiles. Instead, it was red like the sun. Also, there appeared to be a black flower in the middle of its forehead. Awa! The beast screamed, and it shook the heavens and the earth. It expanded its wings, and the red muddy water in the pond gushed all around. It's the one! Quickly run! Yin Qingluo shouted at the top of her lungs. She wanted to retreat, but she was severely injured and was too weak to run. Guardian Jean, who had been guarding her, was unable to reach her as he was being attacked by a silver ring crocodile. The silver ring crocodile stretched out its claws and attacked him ferociously. Guardian Jean quickly rolled away to dodge its attack. But when he got up, the crocodile attacked him again. He could not get rid of the creature for the time being. He saw that the king of silver ring crocodiles was rushing toward Yin Qingluo, but he could do nothing. He was certainly worried and his face turned pale. Yin Qingluo closed her eyes and sneered. She thought to herself, Difui, you didn't keep your promise. You said that you would protect me. Shua. A loud crashing sound was heard. She felt a sudden tightness at her waist, and she was suddenly thrown into the air. Her heart raced as she wondered what happened. She opened her eyes and found herself wrapped in purple cords. The one who was controlling the cords was Difui. He was floating in the air, and his finger was pointing at the 2 crocodiles that were attacking Guardian Jean. There were 2 colorful lights shot toward the 2 crocodiles that forced them to retreat momentarily. He then shouted, "Retreat!" Guardian Jean took the opportunity to escape from the 2 crocodiles. He tried to get as close as he could to Difui, and together, they ran toward the entrance of the cave. At that very moment, almost all the crocodiles were alarmed by the situation. There were hundreds of crocodiles hunting the three of them. The king of the silver ring crocodiles led the chase. The speed of these crocodiles was extremely fast. Hence, Di Fui pulled Yin Qinglue with him as fast as he could. Yin Qinglue was still wrapped in the purple cords, and felt like a flag being blown by strong winds. Even though Di Fui kept his word, it was easy to see that there was a feeling of disappointment in her eyes. It seemed that he did not even want to touch her, despite the fact that she had kept her word. Di Fui, you are too cruel, she thought to herself. Yin Qinglue seemed to have spoken the truth earlier. The crocodiles did leave their territory, but only up to 1,000 feet. Therefore, after the three people were more than 1,000 feet away from the swamp, the crocodiles turned back. In the end, only the biggest silver ring crocodile continued the journey. Its two big lantern-like eyes were staring at Yin Qinglue, who was still trapped in Di Fui's purple cords. Its eyes were getting red. Chapter 2384. No one can be compared to me. The three of them finally led the giant king crocodile to the entrance of the cave. Initially, it stood at the entrance and watched as Di Fui and his two companions leaped into the cave. During its contemplations, it succumbed to the temptation of Yin Qingluo's blood, and finally also jumped in. Inside the large cave, Gu Shijio, Zhu Duqing, and Hua Qianjun were alert and ready to attack. Hua Qianjun was a specialist in the use of poisons, and was also an expert in martial arts. Having followed Di Fui as a subordinate, he learned about array formations from the Devil King. Among all the guards, he was the one who learned the fastest. He was almost as good as the Devil King, so every time the guards needed to set up an array formation, he was always chosen to lead it. He believed that only a few people in the Shura world could compete with him. Therefore, when Di Fui left with Brother Jin and Yin Qingluo, he immediately began to ask Gu Shijio and Zhu Duqing to listen to his commands. Zhu Duqing had seen the formation before, and he was quite impressed with the man's knowledge. If Gu Shijio were not here, he might have listened to Hua Qianjun's instructions. But now, he used the fan on his hand to point at Hua Qianjun and said, "Let my master set it up. You listen to her orders." Hua Qianjun was stunned. He frowned. This is not the time to compete. The Devil King will soon bring the crocodile back. Our time is very limited. Please listen to my orders and don't delay us. Zhu Duqing smiled. Your formation is far worse than my master's. If we listen to you, it will waste even more time. Hua Qianjun's facial expression changed at this remark. He involuntarily clenched his fists. Mr. Zhu, I know that you want to protect your master. However, please don't turn this task into a joke. When it comes to setting up array formations, no one can be compared to me in the Shura world, other than the Devil King himself. You are just Bragjin. Chapter 2385. Struck by lightning. He had already used all the tricks in his book to try to break the array, but found himself still trapped in Gu Zijia's simple formation. Shua. A big stone was suddenly moved, and Gu Shijio appeared 3 feet away from the man. She glared at him and said, "It has been 5 minutes. What do you have to say?" Hua Qianjun remained silent. He looked at Gu Shijio with some respect. He was willing to own up to his loss, so he said, "I will listen to your instructions." "Very good. You have already delayed us for 5 minutes, so you must pay it back quickly. Please move the big rock over and put it here." She pointed at a specific location. Hua Qianjun looked at the big rock, and then looked around. He felt bad. In 5 minutes, Gu Shijio and Zhu Duqing had already finished arranging at least half of the array. There were more than a dozen large boulders in different positions, and there were several poles of bamboo standing in the gaps between the rocks. The big rock that Gu Shijio asked him to move was the largest one in the whole cave. It was about 10 tons and was located in the corner of the cave. Hua Qianjun had to do as told, so he headed over to the big rock. Fortunately, he still had a lot of energy. Hence, he managed to move the heavy boulder to its designated position without a break. While analyzing the formation again, he seemed to feel a sense of familiarity. His heart raced as he asked, "Did you learn about array formations from the Devil King?" He could see that Gu Shijio and the Devil King had quite a complicated relationship. They were probably together in the past. Perhaps the Devil King had taught her about array formations. Gu Shizhou glanced at him with a faint smile. Would you believe it if I told you that I am the one who taught this formation to the Devil King? Hua Qianjun was stunned. How could that be? Gu Shizhou leisurely replied. Anything is possible. Besides, you hardly know me. I almost had your Devil King as my disciple before. Anyway, quickly form up the array. I am very weak, so I have to rely on both of you. Hua Qianjun felt like he was struck by lightning. While he was diligently moving the big rocks as quickly as he could, he asked, Is Miss Gu much older than the Devil King? Gu Shizhou kept silent for a moment. This had always caused her trouble in the past. Before she answered, Zhu Duqing laughed out loud. That's funny. In this world, people are respected by their capability, not by age. Take me for instance. I am much older than Miss Gu, but I also got her to be my master. Perhaps your Devil King used to be less capable than Miss Gu, so it is not surprising that he would consider her as his master. Hua Qianjun looked at Gu Shizhou and sincerely said, I understand now. Our Devil King is more capable than Miss Gu at the moment. He is a student that surpassed his teacher. Therefore, he did not worship Miss Gu as his master in the end, right? What an analysis! Gu Shizhou was too lazy to entertain him any further, so she ignored him. Zhu Duqing used a fan to knock Hua Qianjun on the head. Where did you accumulate so much nonsense? If your master learns about what you had just said, he might peel off your skin. Quickly get back to work. Hua Qianjun was speechless. He finally grasped the subtleties of this array formation in the process of arranging the giant rocks. His attitude toward Gu Shizhou turned from skepticism to admiration. Perhaps Miss Gu's spiritual power might not be as good as the Devil King's, but her abilities in array formations were certainly superior. Hua Qianjun could not help but stare at her again. Miss Gu was, indeed, a beautiful and capable woman. It was not surprising that the Devil King admired her so much, and that the princess would not stand a chance. Initially, he always thought that Gu Shizhou was a latecomer and a third party who manipulated the feelings of the Devil King, but now, it seemed that this was not the case. Perhaps their princess was the third party? All three of them were masters in their own right, and their array-forming techniques were excellent. Thus, when Gu Shizhou instructed them to arrange the array according to her specifications, they could understand her very well and finish their jobs quickly. It was initially a very complicated and challenging array, but it was arranged in less than a quarter of an hour because of the talented hands involved in the arrangement. While they were at work, Gu Shizhou quickly explained the functions of the array, as well as the matters needing attention during the fight. Find authorized novels in Webnovel Faster Updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. Her explanations were simple and straightforward. They were also well organized and straight to the point. Over time, Hua Qianjun's admiration for Gu Shizhou only continued to grow. She was certainly no ordinary woman. She was unlike Princess Yuan, who was also very beautiful though in a delicate manner. She could easily trigger any man's strong desire to protect her. On the other hand, Miss Gu was very independent and confident, yet also charming at the same time. It was impossible for anyone to ignore her. Even if Hua Qianjun did not want to admit it, deep inside his heart, he felt that Miss Gu and his Devil King were a better match. Nonetheless, he still sympathized with his princess. Suddenly, the three of them heard a rumbling sound from above. It was clear that Di Fui and the team had successfully attracted the attention of the crocodile they intended to capture. Judging from the noise, they were coming back very soon. Gu Shizhou quickly teleported to the tip of the highest rock and said, "Stand by at your designated positions." Zhu Duqing and Hua Qianjun rushed to their own respective positions. In a frenzied state, Hua Qianjun expressed a concern. "Miss Gu, what if the other three do not recognize this array?" This array required 5 people to hold up. The 3 of them would not make any mistake. However, if the other 3 did not recognize this array, they may even find themselves trapped in the formation. Your Devil King knows this array, and I will take care of the other 2 people. While they were talking, 3 figures dashed in at lightning speed while a behemoth figure followed suit. Gu Zijia's eyes were sharp as she quickly noticed the purple cord Di Fui used to tie Yun Qingluo. Furthermore, Yun Qingluo's clothes were in a mess. Her face was slightly greenish, and her lips were black. This was a sign that she had been poisoned. Boom! The silver ring crocodile slammed into the array. Quickly, Gu Shijio teleported to Yun Qingluo's side and shoved an antidote into her mouth. She quickly covered her mouth to force her to swallow the medicine. As Gu Shijio moved so quickly, Yun Qingluo did not have time to prevent the medication from entering her throat. Hua Qianjun was shocked and subconsciously jumped over. "Miss Gu, what are you doing?" "Saving her life." Gu Shijio spoke very briefly and handed Yun Qingluo to Guardian Hua. "Bring her to the corner of the cave that we passed earlier. It is the safest there." Yun Qingluo never thought that Gu Shijio would save her. She opened her eyes and looked at Gu Xijiu with complicated feelings, but she did not speak and closed her eyes again. Guardian Hua did not dare to challenge Gu Shijio and immediately took Yun Qingluo to the said place. Chapter 2387. I didn't expect you to save her. This place was in one of the corners of the cave. If the battle went according to plan, Yun Qingluo would remain unharmed. Meanwhile, the firmament stone sent an audio message to Gu Shijio. "Master, I didn't expect you to save her. Don't you hate her?" Gu Shijio answered indifferently. "I hate her, but I don't want to put Di Fui into a difficult situation." The firmament stone was silent for a while. "Master, do you really love Di Fui?" Gu Shijio was stunned by the question and did not speak. "Master, if he is not Huang Tu, will you still love him?" The firmament stone added to its previous question. Gu Shijio heaved a sigh before answering very directly, "Yes." She had fallen in love with him. She was sure of that. It was not because he could possibly be the reincarnation of Huang Tu, but because of who he was as a person. Even though she was waiting for Huang Tu to be reborn, she could not hide the fact that she had fallen in love with this man who was much younger than her. She had previously used the excuse that Di Fui was the reincarnation of Huang Tu just so that she could justify her feelings for him. The firmament stone did not expect Gu Shijio to be so open with it. "Master, I agree. Living in the present is the most important thing. You are meant to be together." At this moment, the formation was intact. As she headed back into the formation, she warned the firmament stone. "You'd better keep your mouth shut. We have to focus on killing this crocodile." The firmament stone remained out of her mind from then on. It was a spiritual jade, and it needed to absorb spiritual power to support its normal operation. Gu Shijio hid a pile of spiritual crystal in its storage space, so it had been shutting itself down to absorb the power from these crystals. However, it did not shut down completely. It still allocated some of its attention to sense the mood of its master. Therefore, it roughly had some idea of what had happened to Gu Shijio recently, although it did not know the details. It observed Di Fui and felt even more surprised. He actually wore the same attire that celestial masters we used to don. Did he get back his memory? The firmament stone could not believe it. The heavenly laws would not let him restore the memory of his past life so quickly. After all, his entire existence was erased by the heavenly laws. It was a huge accident that Yun Qingluo could retain her memories of him. There should not be any other mistakes. In any case, Gu Shijio managed to reunite with him again. Both of them had no past memories of each other, but they could still find each other by instinct. This showed that they were truly meant to be together. The firmament stone was pleased by the thought. On the other hand, the crocodile that was attracted to this place was in a difficult situation. It had cultivated for thousands of years. Although it had not transformed into its human form yet, it had already obtained human wisdom, and its brain capacity certainly noteworthy. It had no interest in humans because they were too negligible for it. That was why it did not appear even though the rest of the crocodiles were attacking Di Fui and his team. However, it later smelled the special scent of blood from Yun Qingluo, and its blood started to boil. Its blood rushed into its brain and ignited all of its cells, just like the excitement one receives from cigarettes due to its nicotine content. It had lost its ability to think straight, and as a result, it was now trapped in these giant rocks. When it came to this place, It naturally saw the large and small rocks that were arranged all around the cave, but it did not think too deeply about them. Besides, the biggest rock was only the size of its paw. Why would it need to be afraid of them? However, after it went in, it found that something was not right. Initially, there were just a few rocks around the place, but now, it had become multiple towers. The bamboos between the boulders initially looked thin and harmless, but they were now massive trees with thick trunks. These big trees were quite dense, and they collectively covered up the sky. The king of the silver ring crocodiles was enormous, so anything it saw was usually as small as an ant in its eyes. However, this time was different. It was the one that felt like an ant while everything else was so huge. Even the humans it had chased earlier suddenly looked like giants. Find authorized novels in Webnovel Faster Updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. It had fallen into an illusion. Whether it was a person or a beast that fell into the trap, there was always a subconscious fear for an opponent that was larger than itself. Hence, this was the same for the giant crocodile. After it rushed around trying to escape, it suddenly felt paralyzed in fear. It had always been dominant when it fought. Its sheer momentum when traveling was enough to cause its opponents to flee. It was also always surrounded by its followers, so it was never afraid of anything when it was in the poisonous swamp. However, it did not have its followers around this time. It was all alone. Furthermore, the illusion made it fearful of what it saw. This crocodile was considered to be very powerful. If it fought seriously, even someone at the level of a golden immortal might not be able to beat it. However, the illusion made things different. Any human would already strike fear in its heart. The purple-robed man gave it a bad headache. All the tricks he used on it made it felt extraordinarily painful, and it almost collapsed. Furthermore, the woman in the green dress was the most outrageous. Although her strength was weaker than the purple-robed man, the angles of her attacks were extremely excruciating. She solely picked on its weak points, and it was unable to block any of the attacks. Yin Qingluo sat on a large rock while observing the battle. She saw that the silver ring crocodile was almost defeated, and it was only a matter of time before it was killed. Her fists were clenched, and her eyes also flashed briefly. The situation seemed to be a little unexpected. Guardian Jin stood in front of her and protected her the whole time. Naturally, he did not observe her facial expression as his attention was entirely on the battle in the field. He saw that his demon king was extremely agile and quick. He continuously appeared in between the giant rocks, and every time he did, he would successfully hit the crocodile and injure it. At the same time, Gu Shijiu stayed in the middle of the array. Whenever she noticed a weak point in the array, she would teleport to the position and efficiently fill the gap. She and Di Fui rushed back and forth in the battle. It was a dazzling sight watching them synchronize perfectly. As for Mr. Zhu, he seemed relaxed. He twirled his goose feather fan in his hand, and it caused changes in the bamboos. They either grew bigger, or their leaves would turn into sharp weapons that were aimed at the crocodile. As for Hua Qianjun, he was on standby and ready to reposition any boulders that would fall out of place. Occasionally, he would even launch an attack on the crocodile when it was not prepared. Guardian Jin was so excited witnessing the scene. He really wanted to join them. Unfortunately, he did not understand this array, and he had to guard Yin Qingluo, so he could only watch in awe. He was certainly very excited, but he did not dare to leave. Guardian Jin, you can go and help them. Yin Qingluo said softly. I can't, you are still seriously injured. Someone must protect you. No problem, this place is very safe. The beast is not able to attack me here. Besides, I also have my own self-defense mechanisms. Yin Qingluo took out a magical weapon from her storage space. It was a protective cover. Once people hid in it, they were given some extra protection. Guardian Jin was slightly convinced at that point. Yin Qingluo continued. Go and help them, even if it is just to help them to move the big stones around. Chapter 2389. Protection. Alas, Guardian Jin was convinced. He nodded as he responded. In that case, let me go and help them. You should still be careful. If something is wrong, do not hesitate to call one of us. Yin Qingluo nodded. All right. Soon Guardian Jin joined the battle. He was also skilled in array formations but was not as good as Hua Qianjun. However, he had spent some time watching from the sidelines, and was able to remember some steps. He was certainly smart, so that helped. He did not attempt to fight with the crocodile just yet, but instead, assisted Hua Qianjun in repositioning any boulders. Hua Qianjun had basically positioned himself at the weak point of the array. With Guardian Jin's assistance, the pressure he felt was relieved. As Gu Shizhou teleported around the place to secure the array, she suddenly saw Guardian Jin, and was stunned. She asked, "Why are you here?" Gu Shizhou quickly tried to locate Yin Qingluo. Although she found her, there was a big stone blocking most of her body. Guardian Jin had already learned from Hua Qianjun that Gu Shizhou formed this array, so he admired her. He told her what Yin Qingluo said to him, and also offered to help. Since Gu Shizhou tried not to use her spiritual power, she found herself very fatigued from this battle. If Guardian Jin were able to help her, it would certainly ease her work. Therefore, she agreed to Guardian Jin's proposal. Nevertheless, before they could really do anything together, Di Fui had suddenly emerged. When he saw that Guardian Jin was around Gu Shizhou, his facial expression changed. "Guardian Jin, why are you here? Go back and protect Princess Yuanyuan. You must not let anything happen to her." The Devil King brutally scolded Guardian Jin. He did not dare to refute, so he could only agree and turn around immediately. Gu Shizhou was stunned by this action, and almost tripped over a big stone. Her body seemed to jerk a little. Di Fui held her from the side and asked, "What happened to you?" Gu Shizhou pushed him away. "Nothing, quickly finish off the crocodile." Di Fui frowned. When he held her, he felt that her hands were cold. It was not normal. Just as he was about to check further, he heard Yin Qingluo screaming, "Help!" As he looked in her direction, he saw that the crocodile, which was still trapped a moment ago, had broken through the array and was headed directly toward Yin Qingluo. At that very moment, Guardian Jin had not arrived by her side. Di Fui was also far away from her. It was too late for either of them to rescue her. However, Gu Shizhou quickly teleported over. Before Yin Qingluo finished screaming, Gu Shizhou had already appeared by her side and teleported her to safety. The crocodile had raised its paw to attack Yin Qingluo, but only managed to tear Gu Zijia's sleeve. Fortunately, none of them were hurt. They appeared in another relatively safe place, and Gu Shizhou put her down on the ground. When she just put her down, Di Fui also arrived at the scene. He grabbed Gu Zijia's hand and asked, "Were you hurt? Let me take a look." He was particularly worried about the arm which the crocodile scraped. Gu Shizhou pulled her hand back. "I am fine, you don't have to check." She turned and teleported again. Di Fui was speechless. He looked at Yin Qingluo, whose face was pale. She looked back at him and tried to speak. "Brother, I am fine, don't worry." Although her voice was soft, Di Fui was able to hear it. Di Fui did not care about her right now. Instead, he instructed Guardian Jin, who had just arrived, "Look after her. If you dare to leave her side again, I will peel off your skin." Guardian Jin quickly agreed, and did not leave her side again. Yin Qingluo pursed her lips with a pair of teary eyes. "Brother, I know you still care about me." Di Fui glimpsed at her and casually replied, "You overthink. Yin Qingluo, stop fooling around. Otherwise, you will face the consequences." He turned around and walked away when he finished. Guardian Jin was stunned by what he heard. Yin Qingluo? This was the first time he learned that Princess Yuanyuan's name was actually Yin Qingluo. Yin Qingluo's heart skipped a beat by the realization. Upon brief contemplation, she put on a smile on her face. What could be worse when she was already at her lowest point in life? The silver ring crocodile seemed to have sensed its death approaching. Anxiously, it became even more ferocious. Its power seemed to have doubled while its size also grew. It pounded on the array formed by Gu Shizhou, trying to find a way to escape. Most of the features behind the array were based on illusions. In the past, the crocodile used to be affected by the illusions, particularly when it saw a large mountain falling toward it. However, It decided to ignore them and began to counterattack with its claws when it saw the mountain falling toward it again. Find authorized novels in Webnovel Faster Updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. After all, the mountain was just an illusion. It was just a few huge rocks. Hence, it was crushed into dust when the crocodile smashed it. It seemed to be surprised that the mountain was so fragile. Instead of fearing the illusions, it decided to attack them with all its might. It also spat a massive puddle of venomous red liquid to try to break the array. It did not hold back any of its abilities. Suddenly, the team found the rocks being destroyed one by one. Thus, Hua Qianjun quickly filled the gaps with new rocks. Unfortunately, he was unable to replace the rocks fast enough since half of the rocks in the array had been destroyed in less than 30 minutes. Everyone was getting anxious now, especially Guardian Jean. He was instructed to protect Yun Qingluo, which was supposed to be the most straightforward job. Unfortunately, the crocodile began to attack him once it figured out the secret behind the illusions. If the rest of the group were not working hard to stop the crocodile, it would have torn the two of them into pieces. In addition, the venom from the crocodile and the strong gusts of wind it created made matters even more challenging for them. Hua Qianjun, stay in this position from now onward. Di Fui made way for him. Yes. Hua Qianjun dashed quickly to where Di Fui stood. Mr. Zhu, please assist me. Di Fui rushed to Zhu Duqing and drew a spell on his palm. Print this on the bamboos with your spiritual power. Certainly, Zhu Duqing followed Di Fui's instructions. The spell seemed to be glowing on his palms as he tapped on the bamboos. Strangely, a layer of protection formed on all the bamboos that had been cast with the spells. Thus, it was not so easily damaged when the crocodile smashed it. Meanwhile, Di Fui cast a spell on the rocks in the vicinity. There appeared to be a protection membrane formed around the rocks after he cast a spell on them. As a result, the quantity of the bamboos and the rocks remained unchanged for a short period. However, this strategy consumed a lot of spiritual power, and Zhu Duqing began to feel dizzy after casting spells on the bamboos. The two men with the highest spiritual powers were busy casting spells. Hence, the responsibility of guarding the array fell on Gu Shijiao and Huan Qianjun's shoulders. It was not a big deal for Gu Shijiao as she was the one who created the array and was good at using the rocks as her shield. However, it was a little more difficult for Hua Qianjun as he struggled to defend himself. In just a few minutes, his face began to turn pale, and his limbs were numb. Fortunately, Di Fui often passed by and managed to help him out. Otherwise, he would have slumped to the ground purely out of exhaustion. Gu Shijiao was sitting at the center of the array. Although she was stressed out too, it was manageable for her at the moment. Di Fui also helped her occasionally, but she would frown when he did. I can manage this, you should help Guardian Hua. Di Fui looked at her and asked, do you not want my help? Gu Shijiao pursed her lips. I can handle this. Di Fui paused and sighed. Shijiao, sometimes, I wish that you are weaker. In fact, he hoped that she could rely on him. He would even be okay if she were acting like a cute baby in front of him. He would certainly prefer that to her trying to put everything on her shoulders like a man. He wanted to keep her under his wings so that he could protect her from everything, including the wind and rain. Subconsciously, he thought that it was the way they should interact with each other. He did not want their relationship to be the way it was right now. She was too independent to the extent that she might even want to stand in front of him and protect him. It was not the time to argue with her, so Di Fui left her side and continued casting spells on the rocks. Gu Shijiao paused and then smiled awkwardly. In fact, she wanted to be weak sometimes. However, she could not do so whenever she remembered that Di Fui was still a kid. She used to act cute with him when she suffered from amnesia, and thought that Di Fui was her fiancé. However, she remembered everything now. How could she be cute to a child who was just 10 years old? Yun Qingluo was indeed a lovely woman. She was just like a little bunny in front of Di Fui. Perhaps, that was the reason he liked her? Gu Shijiao shook her head as she did not want to think about all these problems right now. She was not usually an indecisive person. However, she was completely helpless when it came to love. She realized that she was not her usual self. In fact, she was distracted and did not notice that the crocodile, which was busy attacking Hua Qianjun, had changed its target. Its claw nearly smashed her. When she noticed it, its claw almost hit her skull. "Watch out!" She heard a loud shout. Hua Qianjun jumped forward and landed in front of her. Swiftly, she quickly teleported away with the man. Unfortunately, she was slightly late. When they landed on a giant rock, she realized that Hua Qianjun's chest was injured. Dark green blood gushed out from the wound, and his face turned purplish in an instant. He was poisoned. Fortunately, all of them had consumed an antidote before they entered the swamp. Otherwise, Hua Qianjun would have been dead by now. Chapter 2391. Her baseline Gu Shijio quickly fed him another antidote, but Hua Qianjun struggled to swallow it. Unfortunately, there was no time for Gu Shijio to treat him at that moment. When she was about to teleport away with Hua Qianjun, he grabbed her dress. "Miss Gu." Gu Shijio frowned. Yes. Since he had saved Gu Zijia's life, she was courteous to him. Hua Qianjun paused, and he seemed to feel it difficult to speak his mind. In the end, he decided to be frank. "I know that our princess is guilty, but she is so miserable as it is. Please spare her life." Gu Shijio frowned. "The reason you saved me was to ask me to return a favor?" Hua Qianjun's eyelids seemed to close. "I hope you can promise me this one thing." Gu Shijio casually continued. "Did you know that I could have escaped the attack even if you did not save me?" Hua Qianjun did not speak a word. He realized that his current situation would not change Gu Zijia's mind. He softly added, "Okay, just forget that I asked." Gu Shijio took a good look at him and decided to continue. "Although you have done something silly, you did try to save my life. I can make you a partial promise. From today onwards, I will not get her into trouble if she does not challenge me." That was her baseline, and that was already good enough for the injured man. Hua Qianjun heaved a sigh of relief. "Thank you. Thank you so much." Hua Qianjun knew that things were complicated between Gu Shijio and Yin Qingluo, even though the former had saved the latter moments ago. Perhaps, she only did it as a favor to the Devil King. He would try his best to prevent Yin Qingluo from challenging Gu Shijio in the future. If he could, he would report any incidents to the Devil King so that he could prevent them from getting too serious. It was difficult for Hua Qianjun to find someone he loved. Now that he did, it was his duty to protect her. Throughout their conversation, Gu Shijio had already provided him with basic treatment. However, she did not have enough time to do anything more for the moment. Fortunately, it was curable. She teleported over to Guardian Jean and said, "Try to take out the venomous blood and apply this cream to his chest." Without hesitation, Guardian Jean quickly rushed over to attempt to rescue his teammate. Gu Shijio turned back and looked around the battlefield. She noticed that only Di Fui and Mr. Zhu were left fighting the crocodile. The power of the crocodile was unimaginable since it got stronger. Di Fui and Mr. Zhu could only manage the situation using the array. Things were not looking up for the pair. Mr. Zhu's hair was in a mess, and his robes were torn into shreds. It was as if he was a victim of a stampede. Di Fui still looked tidy and neat, and although he did not seem to be in a hurry, he seemed extremely stressed compared to his usual self. Fortunately, the spell that he cast earlier seemed to work. Furthermore, the number of rocks and bamboos also seemed to increase as Mr. Zhu continued to multiply the bamboos while Di Fui used spells to make the broken rocks as formidable as the unshattered ones. Gu Shijio was a very observant person. She had a hunch that Di Fui seemed to be waiting for something, an opportunity. However, she had yet to ascertain exactly what it was that he wanted. Although she was curious, enough things were going on at the time, so she just stayed in her position and tried to reduce the pressure on the two men. As for Yin Qingluo, she had been sitting there to meditate, like a statue. Her pretty face was ashen, which was certainly a concern for Guardian Jean and the rest. Fortunately, the crocodile did not attack her for the time being, as it was occupied with Di Fui and Mr. Zhu. Since there was no danger, Guardian Jean could concentrate on treating Hua Qianjun's wounds. Gu Zijia's medicine was very useful, as expected. Without too much effort, the poison that had infected Hua Qianjun was almost fully neutralized. However, he could not stand up on his own just yet. Guardian Jean was eager to rejoin the battle, but he did not dare to make any move without instructions from Di Fui. Therefore, he stood at the sidelines, observing the battle. However, as he was excitedly watching the scene, Yin Qingluo, who was at his side, suddenly groaned and vomited blood. Both Guardian Jean and Hua Qianjun were shocked. Meanwhile, Di Fui, who was in the midst of a fierce battle, suddenly flew over. He waved his sleeve, and it seemed like a knife that was aimed at Yin Qingluo. Hua Qianjun instantly rose to his feet. Devil King, please don't. Before he could finish his sentence, Di Fui's sleeves had covered Yin Qingluo. A colorful light appeared briefly and disappeared just as fast. Under the colorful light, they could hear Yin Qingluo screaming. When the light dissipated, Yin Qingluo had fallen to the ground. Hua Qianjun's hands were shaking. When he was going to see how she was, he heard the crocodile's sorrowful screams, and it also fell to the ground. Its body seemed a little disfigured, and its bones were out of position. Its body was shrinking at a speed that could be seen by the naked eye. Its skin gradually changed color, and it now looked like its subordinates from before, though with a slightly larger head. After rolling around in pain, it seemed to have stopped. Di Fui leaped onto the crocodile's body and stabbed his sword right through its chest. He seemed to extract the crocodile's heart and looked relieved. Take it. The extracted heart was bright red, but there was a small groove on it that seemed as though something had been connected to it before. Go and refine the medicine you require. Di Fui handed the heart to Gu Shijiu. Gu Shijiu also breathed a sigh of relief as she took the heart. Thank you. Di Fui seemed rather disappointed by her reply. Instead of throwing a tantrum, he said, "This will be more effective when it is fresh. You should start refining it now." Gu Shijiu did not want to delay the process either. After all, everything else was already prepared. Hence, she started the process. Find authorized novels in Webnovel Faster Updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. Master, please look at the princess. Something is not quite right. Hua Qianjun pleaded. Di Fui turned and slowly walked to Yin Qingluo's side. He looked down at her for a moment and said, "You deserve it." He waved his sleeves, and Yin Qingluo rolled over on the ground. She seemed to have been hiding something which was now exposed. It was a blood-red worm that was shaped like a spoon. It seemed to be biting something. It was biting a heart. It was a relatively small heart, which was probably half the size of a normal human heart. There seemed to be a big hole in it at the moment. Yin Qingluo was in excruciating pain. Her body was curled up like a ball as she rolled on the ground. Yin Qingluo sensed Di Fui's presence. She trembled as she looked up at him. She raised her hand toward him while her lips trembled uncontrollably. She said 2 words, "Save me." Di Fui smirked but did not extend his hand to her. Instead, he said, "The heart of the little demon you raised is being consumed, and you will feel the same feeling in your hollow heart. Does it feel good?" Yin Qingluo's body stiffened in fear by his response. She looked panicked. What? Hua Qianjun and Guardian Jean were also confused. They looked at each other and looked back at the little heart that was in Yin Qingluo's possession. It was an evil trick used to raise a demon in the Shura world. In the early days, many devils were raising little demon in the Devil Kingdom. They raised them for their own use, most often to be a weapon for killing. But who did the little heart belong to? It was very cruel to refine a little demon in the devil world. One needed to kill children cruelly and condense their grievances into a little demon. Due to the process of creating a little demon, the creature would often appear in a gaseous state. Even if it looked like a human being, it had no physical body, and naturally, it would not have a heart. Di Fui sat on a large stone, faintly glaring at her. Still trying to pretend that you are innocent? Yin Qingluo, do you think that you are that good at hiding the truth? Do you think I really believe you? The rest of the group were puzzled by his harsh remarks, but they could see that Di Fui was serious, so they merely stayed quiet and continued to listen. Di Fui spoke again. You told me that the heart of this crocodile could be used to refine the medicine required to detoxify the poison in Gu Zijia's body. That is true. However, if I had killed it by ordinary means, its heart would have been useless to me. it would not be able to produce the required antidote, right? Yin Qingluo closed her eyes. Di Fui had unraveled her secret plan. There was nothing she could do to defend herself now. However, she wondered how he found out the truth. How did you figure it out? Di Fui faintly responded. You have been planning this trick for hundreds of years. You even refined such a special poison just to kill Gu Shijiu. You hate her so much. Yet you told me the way to heal her so easily. Easy. Was it not obvious that you had tortured me ruthlessly? The torture was merely a punishment for your evil deed. However, I am aware that your body has a special characteristic. It is highly resistant to pain. Although you pretended to look like you were in a lot of pain, it was actually very minimal, right? Yin Qingluo bit her lip. She did not expect that Di Fui to know her deepest secret. Her soul had been reincarnated after she fell into deadly magma in her previous life. When she woke up, she was in the Shura world. Buther reincarnation was rather unnatural. She did not have parents, but she still retained the memories that she accumulated over her past 3 lives. Furthermore, she was given a body that was highly resistant to pain. After wandering the Shura world for many years, she finally met Yun Yanli, who had accidentally fallen into this place. Having gravitated to him, she became a tool for Yun Yanli to practice his dark sorcery. However, she did not wish to continue being his tool. When Di Fui tortured her, she tried very hard to make it seem as though it was excruciating. She thought that her performance was good enough to fool him. Hence, Di Fui's sudden revelation came as a surprise to her. If you want to deceive someone successfully, you need to tell them most of the truth in your lie. Therefore, I believed what you said when you told me that I needed to retrieve the heart of a specific crocodile. However, I also knew that you would subsequently do something to complicate matters. I was just waiting to figure it out. Yin Qingluo decided to keep silent. Celestial Masters' powers of observation were unparalleled. Find authorized novels in webnovel faster updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. After coming to the poisonous swamp, I only had one thought in my mind. With your skills, you can't come to this swamp to catch the crocodile alone, so there must be someone mighty helping you. Are you willing to admit that it is Yun Yanli? Yes. He and his subordinates helped me. Yin Qingluo's eyes flashed as she finally admitted the truth. Di Fui merely smirked. You came to the Shura world 100 years earlier than Yun Yanli. Before he came, you must have been practicing dark sorcery here. However, you never disclosed your true appearance, and only stayed behind the scenes. If I were to guess correctly, the sorcery that Yun Yanli used to consume spiritual power from the people in the Shura world was taught to him by you, right? Yin Qingluo remained silent, but her eyes could not hide her fear. He knew that he was right. There must be someone behind Yin Qingluo, but that person was even more deeply hidden than her. Di Fui did not manage to find out anything about that person yet. Since you have already noticed this deception, then why did you dare to take the crocodile's heart and let Gu Shijiu use it? Are you not afraid that the heart is poisonous? Yin Qingluo questioned. Di Fui faintly replied. If I was not confident that it is safe, do you think I would give it to her? Perhaps you are not aware that I used to study about poisons. I know that certain poisons are connected to their creator. I was not quite sure whether this was true of the crocodile, until you attracted it with blood from your heart. The crocodile possessed the characteristics that I expected it to have, and I knew from then on that its heart was indeed the solution. However, what you failed to mention was that I needed to force out of a bug in its heart before it can be used to cure Gu Shijiu, and the bug is closely connected with the little demon that you created. Di Fui continued. When I saw that you were using the little demon to manipulate the crocodile during the battle, I knew that I could use the array to drive out the bug in its heart, and now it is ready to be used as an antidote. Find authorized novels in webnovel faster updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. Yin Qingluo's face looked more ashen than before. She knew the strength of the silver ring crocodile, and did not expect things to end this way. Before entering the swamp, she was convinced that even if it was drawn out, they could not deal with it. In the past, Yun Yanli wanted to use this crocodile to threaten her. He personally brought over 100 top masters to catch it. In the end, he was the only one to return. Yun Yanli had already cultivated to the level of a mighty immortal at that time, and his subordinates had also reached the level of a golden immortal. They were all defeated by the crocodile, so she believed that Di Fui and his small team would not stand a chance. Di Fui was only at the level of a golden immortal, and Zhu Duqing possessed a similar level of spiritual power to Di Fui. Furthermore, Gu Shijiu could not use her spiritual power at the moment since she was trying to suppress the poison. Meanwhile, the two guards from the Devil Palace had barely reached the level of a golden immortal. Based on her estimations, she thought that they would not even stand a chance. It was absolutely beyond her expectations that he would be able to beat the crocodile. Even if Di Fui defeated the crocodile, Yin Qingluo would merely suffer a temporary setback. However, seeing him treat Gu Shijiu so well right in front of her had made her blood boil with jealousy. In fact, she could not wait to die together with Gu Shijiu. Therefore, when she saw that the crocodile was going to be defeated, she made up her mind to use the little demon's heart to manipulate the crocodile. That was when she entered into the trap set by Di Fui. In fact, when she closed her eyes, she seemed to be in a state of meditation. But she was actually secretly manipulating the little demon's heart to empower the crocodile. Di Fui needed this to happen so that the bug in the crocodile's heart could be drawn out. Therefore, Di Fui was always so concerned about her safety. Chapter 2395. Who had been schemed? 4. The skin of the silver ring crocodile was also not naturally red. It was because of the bug in its heart that had caused its genes to mutate. It was for that reason too that it grew to a large size with a strange exterior. Di Fui's mother was a master of poisons while his father was divine lord that possessed incredibly vast knowledge. When Di Fui came to the Shura world, the divine couple had taught him about some poisons that were specially designed for the Shura world. It included information on the characteristics of the silver ring crocodile as well. Therefore, after spotting the crocodile, Di Fui knew that it was mutated. Hua Qianyu and Guardian Jean did not expect there to be so many hidden stories on the matter. They were momentarily stunned by all these revelations. Hua Qianyu looked at the bugs which were still eating the little demon's heart. They looked like tiny snakes. Yin Qingluo felt so bad that cold sweat started to appear all over her forehead. Her body kept twitching involuntarily even though she no longer had to pretend that she was in pain. Hua Qianyu was so disappointed by what he had witnessed. He made up his mind and aimed one of his palms at the venomous bugs. He was going to kill one. Since these bugs caused her pain, perhaps killing them would relieve her. Just as he was about to take its life, Di Fui suddenly issued a glimmer of light to stop him. Hua Qianyu was shocked and took 2 steps back. He kneeled on the ground. Devil King, she used to be your beloved sister. Please spare her life and save her. Di Fui faintly smiled at him. Are you giving me an order? Hua Qianyu continued to bow. I dare not. I am begging for your mercy. Please save her. Di Fui responded slowly. Hua Qianyu, you used to be a big person in the devil world. In the past, you would never surrender, and I wanted to kill you. It was Yin Qingluo who advised me to keep you alive, and she successfully convinced you to surrender to me. Since your surrender, you have made countless contributions to the unification of my kingdom. So I believe that you are important to me. I know that you feel grateful to her for saving your life, so I am fine when you spoil her and occasionally convey news to her about me. However, if you betray me for her. He seemed to be really cold when he said that last sentence. Hua Qianyu was sweating profusely. He knew that he had already angered the Devil King, but he could only kowtow until his forehead was scarred. Devil King, you have the grace to teach me a lesson. I know that it is not right to do this to you, but I cannot let go of her. Can you please spare her life since she has not done anything bad? Has not done anything bad? Di Fui interrupted him. Do you know how her little demon's heart was created? Hua Qianyu was confused. How? How was it created? Her little demon's heart was formed using the hearts of young women. These women were tortured to death by excruciating means so that she could collect grievances from their deaths. Hua Qianyu was speechless. Even though he was a devil, it was hard to imagine this kind of behavior. In his heart, Yin Qingluo had always been gentle and kind. He would not even think that she would hurt a rabbit. Hence, this revelation was completely out of his expectation. Guardian Jin frowned as well at the thought. Although they were devils, they still despised hypocrisy, and Yin Qingluo seemed to be a master of it. Before these men pledged to serve Di Fui, they were all people of noble status in the Devil Kingdom and were quite powerful. They were all able to stir chaos or bring order to society. Furthermore, their power allowed them to receive the latest news about anything that they wished to know. After Di Fui's thorough analysis of the situation, Guardian Jin suddenly recalled something. About 211 years ago, there was a significant incident that shook almost everyone in the Shura world to the core. It was a case that involved a large number of people. Over 1,000 girls went missing. All of them were of different social standings, different backgrounds, and different physical appearances. However, there were two common points that they shared. Firstly, they were all 14 years old. Secondly, their names would either contain the word Shi or Jiao. In the end, all of their bodies were found underground. None survived. Every single one of them was skinned with their tendons and heart removed. All the witnesses from the Devil Kingdom were disgusted by what they found. Find authorized novels in Webnovel Faster Updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. The case had always remained unsolved, and was known as the biggest mystery in the Shura world. Everyone was curious about the identity of the homicidal maniac. He or she must have been really sick to commit such a terrifying and inhumane mass murder. Automatically, people presumed that the killer must be a member of the Devil Kingdom. To Guardian Jin's surprise, the killer was a beauty who looked so delicate and fragile. He took a look at Hua Qianyu and was reminded about one of his relatives that were taken in the mass murder. His beloved niece was killed. Hua Qianyu's brother then lost his mind, knowing that he had lost his daughter in the slaughter. Like every other parent who had lost their daughters, he was obsessed with tracking down the murderer. Later, however, he was found dead, with every drop of his blood drained. There was only fear in his eyes, with a hint of anger. It was an absolutely terrifying scene. Guardian Jin looked at Yin Qingluo, and was convinced that she must be a lunatic. So you are the murderer who skinned the girls, right? Brother Hua. You swore to find the murderer and avenge the deaths of the girls. Hua Qianyu found the truth very unacceptable. He looked at Yin Qingluo with disbelief and asked, Yuan, are you really the murderer who skinned the girls? He wanted to hear what she had to say, even if it was a lie. To his dismay, Yin Qingluo looked up and gave him a wicked smile as she calmly said, Do you know how their families died? They were shocked to death. I tortured the girls in a special chamber that was equipped with a video recording device. The detailed process of their suffering was clearly saved and replayed on one of the walls. The little demon that was slowly moving towards Yin Qingluo by following the bloodstains on the ground. Yin Qingluo did not seem to notice it. With a tight smile, she took a few breaths before adding, I kept the families in a special chamber and tied them up on chairs. I then turned on the screen on the wall to replay the process when their daughters slowly died. Then I cut their wrists so that they would lose blood and die. Say no more. Shut up. You are a lunatic. Hua Qianyu trembled in anger. He clenched his fists tightly with all his veins popping out, seemingly ready to punch her in the face anytime. Nevertheless, Yin Qingluo just had to continue. They would die overnight, either scared or shocked to their death, with every bit of their blood drained. As you know, when the number of killings increased, the dead would carry more and more resentment. When I bathed in their blood, I could completely erase the curse that their daughters left behind when I tortured them. It worked like magic. In this way, I could also allow their resentment to grow even stronger. The more their resentment, the more powerful the little demon. Bitch. You demon. Hua Qianyu shouted at Yin Qingluo in a trembling voice. He then raised his hand to hit her. Yin Qingluo gave him a cynical smile with no intention to avoid his swipe at her. However, before he managed to hit her face, Di Fui interrupted them. Let us keep her alive for now. Hua Qianyu's bloodshot eyes clearly showed his anger. He was confused as to why Di Fui would want to keep her alive after everything she did. Di Fui calmly said, Keep an eye on her, both of you. Keep her alive. He then raised his hand and launched a streak of 7-colored light to remove the venom that was on her chest. He then placed the poison in a small bottle and kept it in his storage bag. Yin Qingluo's expression changed all of a sudden, and she started laughing hysterically. Difui, it seems that you are still reluctant to let me go, she claimed. Difui gave her a smug look and said, is that what you think? Please proceed as you please. Yin Qingluo was irritated. Kill me. Why don't you just kill me? Even if you keep me alive, I will never tell you about the man behind all this. There's no way that is happening. Difui answered her briefly, we will see. He then left to check on Gu Shijio, who was still in the array formation. Gu Shijio needed to perform the alchemy process in a quiet environment, so Zhu Duqing made her a bamboo house at the core of the array formation. The house could block out all external sounds. Yin Qingluo watched as he left, but anger and hatred filled her eyes. There was something more behind what she was showing them, something too complicated to explain. Both guardians, Jin and Hua, felt an unreasonable sense of fear. Yin Qingluo, the Devil King has always been kind to you. Don't you feel guilty for setting him up? Tell us about the man behind the plan, and perhaps he will let you go. Guardian Jin tried to persuade her while suppressing his anger. Nevertheless, she laid there with her eyes closed, pretending she had not heard a thing. Without the Devil King's order, he would have killed her already. Hua Qinyu clenched his fists. He used to be very close to his niece. After she died, he swore to avenge the deaths of his niece and his brother. For years, he had been painstakingly trying to find the murderer, but to no avail. Never did he realize that the murderer had always been by his side. Sadly, he had even fallen for her. Hua Qinyu wanted to slap himself for falling into her trap. Yin Qingluo, I have been blinded. But right now, I just want to kill you. Yin Qingluo opened her eyes and looked at him firmly. Do it, she said. All of her evil plans had been thoroughly exposed. There was nothing she was afraid of anymore. So she would gladly accept her fate, and hoped that Hua Qinyu would kill her right away. Hua Qinyu did not say anything. Instead, he vented his anger on a big rock by shattering it. You do not dare to kill me, such a coward. You do not even have the courage to avenge the death of your loved ones. Hua Qinyu, you are nothing but a coward. Yin Qingluo continued to agitate him. Find authorized novels and web novel faster updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. Hua Qianyu's face flushed with indignation, and he was ready to attack her. However, Guardian Jin quickly stopped him. The woman seeks a quick death. Don't grant her wish. Slowly, Hua Qinyu took a deep breath and was finally able to calm down. He continued to observe Yin Qingluo. Her robes were completely soaked in sweat. Perhaps she really did suffer. Yin Qingluo, you have killed so many innocent lives. This is the punishment that you deserve. I will not kill you. Watching you suffer in agony is my kind of revenge. Yin Qingluo looked up and gave him a tight smile. She was actually very weak, with barely any strength left. Quivering, she could not even sit herself up. She did not even have the strength to end her own life. Guardian Jin wanted to end Yin Qingluo, but he had to obey the Devil King's order. There must be a bigger plan that he was not seeing. But what was the Devil King planning on to do? Guardian Jin could not figure it out, though he knew that keeping her alive was more than just to interrogate her. For someone who was as careful as Yin Qingluo, it would be difficult to make her speak the truth. Furthermore, keeping her alive would make things complicated for the group, as she was sure to have more evil schemes. Hence, for now, all he could do was to keep his eyes on her, and make sure she did not have any opportunity to do something to sabotage them. Difui took a walk around the bamboo house, and found a place to sit outside. Zhu Duqing designed the house to be rather uninviting as he did not want her to be interrupted. Hence, there were no doors or windows. According to Zhu Duqing, Gu Shijio could only leave the house when the alchemy was complete to make sure that there was no disruption while she was working. It was not an easy task to get the guiding herb, so Difui was very anxious about the result as well. He wanted to help her, but he dared not interrupt at this moment. The journey had been exhausting for him, so he closed his eyes to meditate for a moment. In fact, His body was aching from the journey. Di Fui was not keeping Yin Qingluo alive simply because he felt indebted to her. In fact, he had already repaid her more than she deserved. It was Yin Qingluo who was indebted to him for his kindness. Yet he could somehow tell that killing Yin Qingluo was unwise at the moment, and would probably initiate a series of unfortunate events. Yin Qingluo seemed too desperate to die. In this peculiar place, he had to be extra careful not to make any impulsive decisions. He took a look at Yin Qingluo and saw her lying on the ground helplessly without even the strength to sit up. She kept trying to trigger the two escorts, but they did not even care to listen. Find authorized novels and web novel faster updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. Relieved, he knew that he would always need great people to help him do great things. Hua Qinyu was a real talent that was rare to come by. He was a man of great capability and loyalty. Di Fui knew that he had feelings for Yin Qingluo, but he needed to see the harsh truth for himself. With this, he would be able to let go of her. Hua Qinyu certainly deserves someone better. Yin Qingluo was unworthy of him. Although the poisonous swamp area was dangerous, it certainly had great views. There were no animals in sight either. Alone, Zhu Duqing sat guarding the entrance from above, and was pleased to find no intrusions. Meanwhile, Di Fui took the time to meditate and recover. Perhaps he was really tired, so he could feel his muscles aching everywhere. There was an uneasy flow of warm blood across his chest, making him feel rather grumpy. He needed to sit down and keep calm. Whenever he meditated, he could always calm down immediately and immerse himself in the state of complete oblivion. But this time was different. He fell asleep immediately. He had a dream. It was a wet dream. In the dream, there were flashes of light everywhere that brought him back to the village that was concealed within a wizardry barrier. He had just eaten animal testes and penis. Gu Shijio then came by to offer her bed to him, and asked that they sleep together. It was a crazy night that was unforgettable. Many times he reminisced every sweet little moment that he had during that night. He was doing so again in his dream. Certainly, the dream was not a complete reflection of what happened that day. In the dream, he felt like he had just woken up from a night of lovemaking. She had already left the bed. So he woke up and went outside to look for her. He walked out of the white tent and saw a big lake. Chapter 2399. Which party had been schemed? 8. It was a vast, limpid lake with seemingly no end. There was a splash from one corner. Someone was there. Her hair was soaking wet, but her face was stunning. The woman was Gu Shijio. She was gracefully swaying her arms about to stay afloat. Her fair skin sparkled under the sun. It was a breathtaking sight. Di Fui's heart pounded in excitement as he stood watching her swim. "Baby, why did you go swimming so early?" he asked with a smile. He started to think if he should join her in the lake. He had just made love to her not long ago, but his fierce desire started to ignite again. He wanted her. He was even thinking about making love to her in the lake. Di Fui knew that he was desperate, like a famished wolf that could not wait to indulge in its prey. In the lake, Gu Shijio gave him a wave with a smile. "Fui, will you join me?" Di Fui froze momentarily. He somehow recalled that Gu Shijio had been addressing him as the Devil King recently. It had been a very long time since she called him by his name. The familiarity was overwhelming. He stood in a daze by the lake. Gu Shijio tilted her head in confusion. "What is wrong? Don't you want to swim with me?" Di Fui sat down by the water and sighed. "I feel quite tired today. You should keep swimming. I will join you later." Gu Shijio did not want to trouble him anymore and continued her swim. She thought she would try to impress him with her excellent swimming skills and fancy moves to cheer him up. Her every move was captivating. In a twist, she turned around and kept her face up, revealing her elegant body that was loosely covered and offering a fair display of her bosom. With another turn, she dived into the water head-on, thus revealing her ample hips for a moment. Her hips were perfectly shaped, which made his blood boil with lust. Suddenly, she raised her long legs above the water, drawing his attention to her body even more. In those brief moments, Di Fui could already feel his body burning. He wanted her so badly. He suddenly thought that perhaps he should jump into the lake just to calm his desire in the cold water. With a sigh, he waved back at her and said, "Shijio, come up here." Gu Shijio agreed promptly. She was only wearing a loose top and a pair of loose pants. Nonetheless, her soaked clothes were tightly wrapped on her skin, revealing her seductive figure. She came up to him and asked, "Fui, what is the matter?" The look in Fui's eyes darkened. "Baby, how do you normally address me? Can you address me like you used to before?" Gu Shijio thought about it for a moment with her head tilted. "Celestial Masters what?" she said with a smile. Fui smiled at her too. "That is it," he answered while locking his eyes on her. He then invited her to sit down next to him. "Come here. Sit next to me. We need to talk." "All right." Gu Shijio walked towards him and was ready to sit down when a seven-colored light suddenly flashed before her eyes. The light completely surrounded her. It was all too sudden and too close, so she had no chance to escape. Surrounded by the light, she could feel her entire body burning in flames. She screamed out loud and wanted to jump into the water to ease the pain. However, the seven-colored ray had completely bound her, restricting her even from the slightest movement. Her skin was slashed and cut as the result of the violent light, thus causing her a considerable amount of pain. Blinded by the seven-colored light, she called out, "Celestial Masters what are you doing?" Fui slowly rose and threw an icy look at her. "Yin Qingluo, did you really think that I would not know it is you?" Stunned, the female quickly lifted her head. "How did you recognize me?" Yin Qingluo thought that she had set up the illusion remarkably well. Fui smiled as she glared at her. "Both of you are completely different. Why are you so surprised that I can recognize you?" Initially, Fui could not recognize her. After all, it was a dream that originated from his previous sexual encounter with Gu Shijio. Besides that, he was aware that he was just dreaming. Hence, he did not find it suspicious when he saw Gu Shijio swimming in the lake. However, he began to feel that things were strange when he was about to enter the lake. Gu Shijio usually dressed appropriately. She was also a rather prim and proper person. Hence, she would not seduce others in such an overt manner. Of course, since he was aware that it was a dream, it was reasonable for Gu Shijio to behave slightly differently. Therefore, he needed to test the water again to find out if he was right. He was finally certain that it was Yin Qingluo disguising as Gu Shijio when she addressed him as Celestial Masters Needless to say, he was shocked that Yin Qingluo managed to enter his dream. Furthermore, he noticed that his body temperature was rising rapidly. It was the symptom of consuming an aphrodisiac. It was rather uncommon for him to be poisoned, so he tried to sense his internal bodis environment and realized his blood circulated at a high speed. He could also feel energetic worm-like creatures moving in his circulatory system. Wherever the worms went felt swollen and hot. Also, it was a chilly day, but he was sweating. Hence, he knew that Yin Qingluo tricked him. But how did it happen? Since Yin Qingluo's trap had been exposed, she decided not to hide it anymore. She slowly walked over with a pair of charming eyes and asked, "Celestial Masters are you feeling uneasy?" Her rather hoarse voice was not very seductive to Fui, though it might be sweet for some perverts. Fui replied as he watched her getting closer to him. "When did you poison me? Yin Qingluo, are you not afraid that I will shred your soul into pieces?" His tone was gentle, but his words were ruthless. Yin Qingluo paused for a moment. She did not dare to step closer when she thought about the seven-colored power he possessed. However, she seemed to recall something all of a sudden and chuckled. "Fui, I am not afraid of anything now." She smiled evilly and continued, "Celestial Masters I just want you. Am willing to pay any price just to have you, even if I need to trade my soul to the devils." Fui looked at her as if he was looking at a crazy woman. His fingers slowly grasped together with seven-colored rays glowing from his fingertips. It seemed that he was going to attack her at any time. Yin Qingluo did not notice the danger at first but seemed to laugh slightly later. "Celestial Masters do you want to kill me?" "Let me tell you the truth. You can't survive even if you kill me." Fui frowned. Yin Qingluo smiled. You must be thinking this is your dream, and you can control everything. Is that not the case? Difui asked calmly. Of course not. Celestial Master Zhua, this is not your dream. You are in my preset illusion. If you do not have the antidote, you will never wake up. You will suffer here forever. Difui's heart sank at the thought of being stuck here with her. He was surprised that he was tricked even though he had been very cautious. Since Yun Qingluo had certainly executed this plan out very well, she would definitely rub it in his face. Indeed, Yun Qingluo continued. Do you know why the poison is named irreversible? It is because we can't go back once it is started. No other woman can enter the illusion. Hence, I'm the only one that can help you now. An expert taught me this, and I needed to trade my soul and blood as payment. He made a spell and cast it on a beast for me. The poisonous blood of the beast you slaughtered earlier had entered your body once you killed it. Difui asked as he was trying to clear the poison silently. So you used the beast earlier in order to cast the illusion on me? The one almost killed you? Yes, that was it. It was so lazy to move. That is why I knew where to find it, and intentionally woke it up. Find authorized novels and web novel faster updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. That was the trap. Yun Qingluo was indeed obsessed with getting him. Did you not worry that I could not save you in time? Yun Qingluo chuckled. I was well prepared. If you could not save me, I could escape anyway. But as it was ferocious, I knew that you would definitely kill it. Difui pursed his lips. Although he did not express his emotions, the sweat on his forehead showed the chaotic circumstance that he found himself in. Yun Qingluo had a perfect plan. She knew she was still useful, and Difui would not watch her die. Hence, she took the risk. But who was the psychopath who gave her such a dirty idea? It was a potent poison. Difui was very knowledgeable, so he knew that there was no way to clear the poison or even soothe the effect. Although he tried his best to suppress it, his sweat had soaked his clothes, and his blood was circulating like a roller coaster. Yun Qingluo did not stop staring at him, and she could notice every little change in his body. She knew the power of her poison, and she knew that he could not take it. No man could. She checked the time and realized that it was almost the perfect time for her to act. She stepped closer and spoke again. Celestial Master Zhua, I'm the only one who can help you. Do not worry. We are just having sex in this illusion. You are not betraying her. She will never know, so don't push me away. Her eyes were very seductive as her body slowly drew closer to Difui. Are you suffering? You will be fine as long as you make love to me. You might even become more powerful than before. Are you not afraid that it'll kill you later? Difui was sweating as he asked. Yun Qingluo laughed out loud as she lifted her head. I have paid my dues to get this poison. I'll die right after we have sex, and my souls will disappear forever. Difui was pissed. You are insane. Celestial Master Zhua, I am crazy. I'm crazy about you. I'm willing to be your antidote. I'll please you the way you want me to, and no one will never know. Yun Qingluo was like the witch who tried to persuade Xiahua to take the forbidden fruit. Her voice words were certainly alluring to any man. I'm fine with you imagining that I look like her. In fact, that is my physical outlook to you right now. As she was walking closer, Difui was sweating terribly as if he could not control his mind anymore. He contemplated his options. One was a dead end, and the other was a happy playground. Even a lunatic knew which one to choose. Difui was very smart, and he always made wise decisions. Therefore, Yun Qingluo was very confident of the answer that he would choose. He would definitely agree with her demand. Everything would be worth it as long as they made love this one time. Slowly, she leaned on Difui and attempted to hug him. Celestial Master Zhua. A sudden change happened at this very moment. Just as she was about to place her hands on him, a seven-colored ray was launched all of a sudden that coiled around Yun Qingluo's arms. It caused her to feel a sharp pain. When she opened her eyes, she was suspended in midair. What followed her was an icy phrase. Yun Qingluo, you are disgusting. Get off. Apparently, Difui's spell was powerful and ruthless. As she opened her eyes in midair, she noticed that her arms were torn apart from her body with blood gushing out at both ends. Yin Qingluo was surprised that Di Fui could still hurt her in her own illusion. All of a sudden, there was a huge hole in the sunny sky, and she was helplessly sucked toward it. There was no way for her to return even though she tried to resist the force. Di Fui, you will die. You will die if you don't make love to me. She was screaming, with all of her energy. Di Fui continued to push her into the giant hole. He did not even bother to respond to what she had said. The giant hole was a torturous place, and Yin Qingluo's soul would burn in there for 49 days until it vanished forever. And just like that, Yin Qingluo disappeared. At this point, the poison that Yin Qingluo had used was starting to take a toll on Di Fui as he felt as if he was going to explode. His eyes suddenly focused on the lake, and he wanted to jump into it. However, he could not do that at that very moment. Something was strange about the lake. Perhaps it might aggravate the situation. He struggled to get up and began to find his way out. Half an hour later, he was still clueless. He knew it was a nightmare, but he just could not wake up. The tent was burning, the grass was hot, and even the lake was boiling. It was frustrating, and due to the extreme heat, he began to have an illusion. Every single illusion was seductive as he saw Gu Shizhou everywhere. Initially, he could not help but rush over to hug her, only to find that she disappeared again and again. The entire experience was tormenting. It was indeed playing out the way Yin Qingluo had said. He was left there alone in that beautiful place. Even if Gu Shizhou realized something was wrong after making the cure for herself, she could not enter the illusion to save him. The only hope now was that he wished he could enter her dream. That was still a possibility for him. If he wanted to enter her dream, he would have to wait until she was fast asleep. But when would that be? The alchemy process was long and tiring, and not to mention very physically draining. She would definitely take a rest when she was done, right? It would be better if he could watch her first before entering her dream as opposed to directly entering her dream, where he could not tell what was happening around her. The skill of entering other people's dreams required a great amount of spiritual power to perform, so he would not be able to use it repeatedly. Desperately, Di Fui tried to use his spiritual power to put his burning desire to an end while calculating the time he had left. He thought that she would be asleep very soon, so he started to perform the skill right away. To his surprise, he was caught in this inescapable illusion with no way to enter her dream. He sat there, observing the beautiful scenery around him while cold sweats started to soak his forehead. This time, he was afraid that there was no way that he could escape. Suddenly, he heard a voice. Do you regret your decision now? Actually, Yin Qingluo was right. No one from the outside world would know about what happened between the two of you. Why do you have to stand your ground so firmly? If you change your mind, you can still release her. Di Fui sat up straight while cautiously looking around. Who is it? Show yourself. Could there be another person in that space? No one answered, so he could not tell if anyone else was really present. However, the same voice would speak over and over again every few minutes. It was rather annoying after a few times. I will never do anything that I will regret later, Di Fui finally answered. I can let her out, but I will shatter her soul into pieces in the most brutal way. When my needs are not fulfilled, I can always distract myself by torturing her, he calmly said. Find authorized novels and web novel faster updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. The voice finally stopped talking. Di Fui noticed it and quickly asked, Who are you? The voice remained quiet. If you refuse to tell me, I will get Yin Qingluo out here and kill her right away. The voice answered idly, Her life has nothing to do with me. You can do anything to her as you please. At first, Di Fui thought that the voice was preset by Yin Qingluo to help her in times of danger. Now he was unsure. He continued to ask a few more questions, but the voice never appeared again. No matter how he threatened it, it never resurfaced. The vast space was all for him alone. His senses became more and more sensitive to danger, so he closed his eyes to try to assess his environment, and for the first time he felt hopeless. Images of Gu Shizhou started to flash before his eyes, haunting him. He felt frustrated as he had not had the chance to explain to her that she was the only one that he truly loved. No one else. When she was done producing the cure, the first thing that would happen was that she would see him asleep. In fact, Yin Qingluo would be sleeping too. Knowing her nature, she would definitely find it inappropriate to interrupt him while he slept. She would probably greet the two guards and leave swiftly with Zhu Duqing. Even if she noticed that something was not right about him, there was nothing she could do. Her spiritual power was not high enough to support the dream-entering spell. Di Fui knew her well indeed. When the alchemy process was finally completed, she heaved a long sigh of relief. She wanted to swallow the pill right away but hesitated. Di Fui had been working just as hard to help her produce the pill. Hence, she felt that she should show it to him first. Therefore, she held the pill in one hand and knocked on the bamboo wall with another in a particular pattern. 3 long knocks followed by 4 short ones. It was a sign that she wanted to exit. Chapter 2402. The Search 2. Zhu Duqing had a special connection to the bamboo house, so he quickly made an opening for Gu Shijiu after he heard her knocking. He smiled as soon as he saw Gu Shijiu slowly emerge from his soundproof fortress. "Master, congratulations on the successful alchemy." Gu Shijiu was tired, but her spirits remained high. "Where are they?" Zhu Duqing hissed to convey his disapproval. Di Fui seems to be resting. More accurately, he is meditating. Yin Qingluo is hurt. The men are keeping an eye on her. They are there. Di Fui was sitting at a spot that was not too far away from the bamboo house. Gu Shijiu spotted him almost immediately. Di Fui sat with his legs crossed and his eyes closed. He sat there calmly, like a man in enlightenment. Gu Zijia's heart skipped a beat. She always found him unusually charming when he sat like that. It was like someone she knew from a long time ago. Quickly, she moved her eyes away from him and decided to leave him alone. She should not interrupt the man in his meditation. Distracting him could waste his efforts. Zhu Duqing was still beside her. He took a look at the pill in her hand and asked, "Is this the pill that you have just made? Does it work? Should we wake Yin Qingluo up and let her have a look?" "No need. I know what I am doing." Gu Shijiu turned down his suggestion. She was confident in her abilities. Also, she did not want to talk to Yin Qingluo anymore. She then asked Zhu Duqing to secure the perimeters while she went looking for a quiet place to take the pill. After that, she proceeded to use her spiritual power to set the pill in effect. About an hour later, she was delighted to find out that the toxins in her body had been completely cured. She could finally feel a sense of relief. "I am well," she exclaimed with a hopeful leap into the air. Her voice echoed so everyone could hear it. Zhu Duqing congratulated her first. Then both escorts, Jin and Hua, heard her and quickly approached to congratulate her as well. Gu Shijiu noted their kindness with thanks. Their teamwork had left her with a great positive impression. The men were still responsible for Yin Qingluo's safety, so they quickly returned to their spot after some small talk. They did not want to comment too much on the situation. The Devil King was only close by, so he should be the one to do the talking. They should only be involved upon request. Also, the Devil King had always been unpredictable. Hence, they could barely understand what he was thinking. Therefore, they dared not take the matter lightly for fear that they might ruin his plan. "Master Shijiu, now that you are healthy again, should we leave? This is not a place that we should extend our stay," Zhu Duqing proposed. Gu Shijiu gave Di Fui another look and realized that he was still meditating. He did not even move his eyes. Their departure from this place was certainly unrelated to Di Fui. Gu Shijiu thought about it and decided not to disturb him. She talked to Guardian Jin and told him that she was about to leave. Panicked, he said, "Miss Gu, can you leave when the Devil King is awake? He worried about you a lot. At least tell him that you are well and healthy before you leave." Gu Shijiu politely replied, "There is no need for that. You can tell him on my behalf. I have other matters to attend to, so I really should not stay. Please let him know that I will surely repay his kindness someday for what he has done for me today." She then offered him a few bottles of medicine. "These pills can cure many types of common toxins. You will be cured, as long as the toxin is not something complicated. This is my token of appreciation for your help today." Guardian Jean was well aware of her vast knowledge in the field of medicine, and particularly in the use of poisons. The pills must be something precious that he could not possibly obtain from anywhere. Therefore he accepted the gift happily and thanked her. "All right, Master Shijio. Let us go," Zhu Duqing urged her again, somewhat impatiently. Gu Shijio took another look at Di Fui, who was still unconscious. She finally made up her mind and decided to leave with Zhu Duqing. "Master Shijio, where do you plan to go after this? I will find a quiet place to practice and recover." She needed to go back to heaven and from there, return to the Saha world again. According to the rules, she was not allowed to leave the Saha world for more than 6 months. It had already been 2 years. She could not help but wonder if the Saha world was in terrible chaos. The only reason for her return to heaven was to recover, so that she would be able to return to the Saha world at full strength. Her spiritual power was already at level 9. If she worked hard, she could achieve level 10 in no time. And when she finally achieved level 10, she would then face a catastrophe and ascend to heaven. That was the usual practice, but was it the same in the Shura world? "I know a quiet place. It is a place with a strong spiritual aura." Zhu Duqing knew about the Shura world very well, so he could show her many places that not many people knew about. He was confident that not many knew about the secret place that he was about to show her. Not even Di Fui, the one who was known to be knowledgeable about everything. Zhu Duqing was proud of himself for a moment. He continued to emphasize the advantages of different pieces of land for her to choose from. Confidently, he offered to take her wherever she wanted to go. However, to his dismay, Gu Shijio did not respond to his enthusiasm. Find authorized novels in Webnovel Faster Updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. This man is so reckless. How can he be meditating so deeply in such a dangerous place? He does not even have someone to guard him. Is this because his upbringing forced him to be fearless? Her thoughts continued. He kept saying that he cared about her injury, but instead of protecting her, he fell into a deep state of meditation. The scene was similar to a woman who had just given birth and left the operation room, only to realize that her husband was sleeping soundly outside. She knew that he must be tired, but he would not be so deeply asleep while she was busy trying to save her life, right? It did not seem right. Di Fui would not do so. Was there something wrong? Master Shijio, are you listening to me? Zhu Duqing had to wave his hand to see if she was paying attention. I need to go back to have a look at Di Fui. Gu Shijio left him alone and teleported. Zhu Duqing was shocked. They were almost at the end of the tunnel by that time. Even though he admired her teleportation ability, it was a burden for him too, as he found it hard to keep up with her. His complexion was good. His pulse was steady. His eyelids were sealed with no movement from his eyeball. He did not look unwell. However, there was no way she could wake him up. Gu Shijio had been circling him for 8 rounds and tried every possible way to wake him up. She even used her knowledge of acupuncture points and applied it between his thumb and index finger, as well as the middle of his upper lip. He was still unresponsive, not even moving his lashes. It was like his soul had just left his body. This should not be happening, no matter how focused he was on his meditation. Miss Gu, Yin Qingluo is in the same condition. She is not responding at all. Guardian Jean came reporting about what he just found. Could their souls have left their bodies together to do something? Zhu Duqing, who had made his way back, suggested. Did he tell you anything before he started meditating? Gu Shijio asked Guardian Jean. Chapter 2404. The Search for. Nothing noteworthy. He only asked me to keep an eye on Yin Qingluo. Guardian Jean was not too concerned as he shared what he could recall. Miss Gu, sometimes the Devil King will leave his body behind to conduct an investigation. I believe this time is the same. It did not sound right to Gu Shijio, however. If Di Fui were going to take Yin Qingluo's soul away, he would not choose a spot that was so far away from her. He should be sitting next to her. Doing so would make it easier for his men to guard the surrounding, as his body would become an easy target without his soul inside it. Di Fui would not do something so stupid in such a dangerous place. Had they fallen into some evil trick? The trick must have been so carefully planned that even experienced warriors did not realize that these two people's souls were taken away from their bodies. It was even more impressive since the escorts had never left Yun Qingluo alone the entire time. Gu Shijie wanted to ask them for more information, but she was distracted when Difui's body suddenly trembled involuntarily. Cold sweat started to soak his robes. She grabbed his hand and was surprised by his burning palm. Miss Gu, Yun Qingluo seems to be in trouble. Her body is shaking violently. Also, her pulse is getting weaker. Guardian Hua came reporting in a panicked state. Their souls had indeed left their bodies together, and were now caught in what they could only assume was a troubling situation. How complicated could the situation be that even Difui was unable to solve it? Gu Shijie tried to calm down, though her heart was still pounding in a surge of anxiety. It was not the time to find out how his soul left his body. Instead, she needed to know how to find them and save them. Gu Shijie used the soul tracking spell to start looking for the lost souls. She should be able to detect their location as long as they were still within the range of 1,000 miles. However, both attempts failed miserably. Apparently, they must have been trapped in some wizardry barrier that was more than 1,000 miles away. If he really needed to go that far to attend to something urgent, he would have told the two men first before departing. He had disappeared without informing any of his men. Therefore, it was reasonable to believe that their souls were currently trapped in some wizardry barrier. Gu Shijie quickly explored her surroundings, but could not find any wizardry barrier. How was she going to find them? His soul must not be too far away from his body for a period longer than 24 hours, after which time his body would be damaged irreversibly. Since Gu Shijie had spent 4 hours in the bamboo house trying to produce the cure, she knew that she had about 20 hours to find his soul before it was too late. Desperately, she tried to recall everything that she knew in order to find him, but her spiritual power was too weak to perform the spells that she needed. Master, I have an idea. Maybe it will help you find him. The firmament stone suddenly spoke to her in her mind. Gu Shijie felt like hope had returned. How? Master, before I tell you, I need to ask you some questions. Will you choose to save him in times of great danger, regardless of what has happened between him and Yun Qingluo? She was surprised but did not hesitate. Yes, she would never abandon him no matter what. The firmament stone seemed relieved. Regardless of the price that you have to pay? It had to be completely certain. Of course, because she loved him. Gu Shijie could set him free if he had indeed fallen for someone else. She was willing to part ways with him and become strangers again, as long as he was happy. Furthermore, she loved him enough to risk her life for him, so she would pay any price just to make sure he was safe, including her own life. The firmament stone was finally relieved. That is good, Master. Now listen to me. Chapter 2405. An abnormal soul-tracking spell. The firmament stone had tasked Gu Shijie to set up the most secured array formation possible using stones. No one would be able to break into this fortress, and Gu Shijie was finally able to utilize her mastery in this craft fully. Consequently, the three gentlemen found themselves isolated outside of the array formation. No one was allowed to enter. Zhu Duqing thought he knew a lot about the techniques Gu Shijie used in forming these barriers. To his dismay, he had no clue how to break through the one in front of him. The two guardians felt the same. Equally confused, they could only stare at the array formation without a clue. Inside the formation, Gu Shijie was still wondering what was going on. Was the firmament stone playing a prank on her? How could there be such an abnormal soul-tracking spell that required an array formation of such fortitude? She then listened to the explanation from the firmament stone about how to find Difui. The method that the firmament stone had proposed to her was rather exceptional. She was required to sit face-to-face with Difui, both completely naked. More accurately speaking, she had to sit in his lap to be as close as she could be with him. The more skin contact, the better. At first, she felt that it was definitely a prank. However, the firmament stone kept reassuring her that it was the fastest way to track him down. It even said that she was the only one who could save him, and if she did not act swiftly, she would regret it for the rest of her life. Gu Shijio began to panic as the firmament stone continued to tell her more. Fear had completely dominated her ability to think logically. Although between the mess, she sensed a feeling of familiarity. It was as if she had been through a similar situation many years ago. She must not lose him again, she thought. Therefore, Gu Shijio was determined to do as told. She followed the firmament stone's instruction to the last letter. Earlier, Gu Shijio had asked her 3 comrades to guard the place and made sure that the array formation would not be disrupted. The 2 guardians agreed promptly, but Zhu Duqing was unimpressed. Gu Shijio had never properly told him how she planned to save Difui, so he was not quite certain about leaving her alone with the man. Thus, he offered to stay with her and Difui to be their assistant should anything go astray. Gu Shijio certainly did not let him hang around to witness the entire process. But having been familiarized with him, she knew that he would definitely want a clear answer. Unfortunately, she was not able to explain the entire situation to him. Therefore, she decided to send him out using her teleportation technique. When they were out, she reassured him with a pat on the shoulder and said, "Be patient, my disciple. Do as I say, and stay here to guard the place. If you perform well, I will teach you everything you need to know about the facial disguise technique. If not, I will not accept you as my disciple anymore." Zhu Duqing was astonished. However, before he could say anything, Gu Shijio was already gone. She went back into the array formation using her teleportation technique and shut the entrance completely. Zhu Duqing circled the array formation many times, but was still unable to gather any clues as to how to escape. Finally, he decided to stop trying and stood patiently with his fan in his hand. Nonetheless, numerous thoughts circled his mind. If it was only a rescue mission, was it necessary to send everyone out? How was she going to save Difui? The 2 guardians noticed his disappointment. Concerned that he would intervene and disrupt the plan set in place by Gu Shijio, they walked up to him and started to distract him with some small talk. After clearing the place, Gu Shijio finally put Difui down on a flat surface. She barely saw him sitting so quietly. She had been moving around him a lot, but he did not even move one bit. He still sat in his meditating position with his eyes closed, like the jade statue of a Buddha. Inspired by the familiarity of the scene, Gu Shijio could somehow recall the flashback of a jade statue that she once saw in a small pavilion. The vivid image shocked her as she was usually unable to see the images clearly when she experienced hallucinations, but this time was completely different. She saw that the jade statue and Difui looked almost identical. The major difference was their attires. One was in white and another in purple. Chapter 2406, An Abnormal Soul Tracking Spell 2. Master, do you still remember the steps I explained to you earlier? Do I need to repeat them to you again? The firmament stone was worried, as the steps were rather complicated. Even the firmament stone, which was known to have the storage capacity of a computer, found that the steps were difficult to master. Hence, she did not expect Gu Shijio, who was only a human though smart, to be able to ascertain it in one go. Let us do it this way. When you are working on it, I shall stay with you at all times to guide you through it. Ayu. The firmament stone was abruptly switched off. Gu Shijio had turned off all of its senses and kept it away in her storage bag. It was a rescue operation, so she was willing to tolerate being naked. Their position was, however, really awkward for her. Although they had slept together once, it was a very long time ago. Furthermore, she was quite a traditional woman, so she still felt that it was not quite right to strip him naked. Moreover, she was still under the impression that he was together with someone else. Difui, I am only doing this to save your life. I have to. Please know that I do not mean to take advantage of you in your current condition. Gu Shijio explained herself, though she was unsure if he was able to listen. Difui, as before, was completely motionless and unresponsive. If you remain quiet, I will assume that you agree to this, so you cannot come back looking for me to stir any trouble. Determined, she started to take off his robes. His outer robes were loosely designed with special material, making it easy for her to take them off. The real problem was his undershirt, which was tightly fitted, so it became more difficult to take it off when he was in a seated position. It seemed like an impossibility to do so without ripping it off him. While she was taking off his robes, some flashbacks occurred again. In the images, she was trying to take off the robes of a jade statue. "My celestial brother, you look nice even without your clothes. Your robes seem nice. Let me wear them." As the flashback continued, she became more surprised. She could see that the incident happened while she was still on Earth, right after she attached her soul to a new body. There was still a large, red birthmark on her face at the time. Di Fui was the jade statue in the flashback. Gu Zijia's hands started to tremble. From the hints given to her by the firmament stone, she had already figured out that Di Fui was the one that she had been thinking about, Huang Tuesday. However, that was only a guess. Without any memory of him, the feeling was not very intense when she first made the realization. This time, the moment she recognized the man in her flashbacks, she was immediately excited and saddened at the same time. If she was not mistaken, the jade status must be Huang Tu, who was busy cultivating at the time. That was how they first met. The flashbacks lasted longer this time around, for about 4 to 5 minutes. She saw that she had completely stripped off every piece of clothing on the jade status, and wore the robes on herself. She even caressed the face of the statue and touched the statue's private part out of curiosity. Before she left, she even kissed the statue. Every scene played back like a classic black and white movie, and as the images flashed before her eyes, her heart began to race. She was falling for him all over again. Without thinking, she leaned forward and planted a soft kiss on Di Fui's lips, like how she did to the jade statue. She did so with the exact same movements as before and the same position. After the kiss, she was surprised to find out that Di Fui's lips were burning hot. His peaceful expression had concealed the fact that he was suffering. Without the kiss, she would never have found out that his body temperature was actually scorching hot. What was his soul undergoing? Gu Shijio dared not waste another minute in her contemplation. She was still stuck at the removal of his undershirt, and desperately ripped the shirt open and took it off. Finally, all of his clothes were removed. Di Fui's body was undeniably well built. He looked fit without his clothes on. Although he was muscular, he was not too bulky either. Every inch of his strong muscles was perfectly shaped. Even the most professional bodybuilder would not look half as good as he did. Although they had slept together before, it was the first time that she removed his clothes. Gu Shijio was embarrassed and excited at the same time. She tried very hard to ignore the strange feelings that crept up on her. Slowly, she entangled herself in his arms. Find authorized novels in Webnovel Faster Updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. Gu Shijio just had to curse the firmament stone for proposing such a ridiculous idea. However, she did as told and pulled him close. Their bodies were finally in contact with one another. She could feel his breaths very clearly against her skin. Although she knew she should not be feeling aroused, she could not help it. Determined to proceed with the rescue, she stopped her mind from going places and focused on the steps that she should be taking. She did everything that the firmament stone had instructed her to do. Every step was accurate and correct. When she was finally done, their bodies seemed to be attached like a pair of conjoined twins. Their legs were crossed together, and so were their arms. She held him tightly, just as instructed. If others were to see them in this position, they would definitely think that they were conducting the double physical and spiritual cultivation. Furthermore, from their sitting positions, she was the one who initiated it. Before Gu Shijio started the mission, she had already decided that once everything was over, she had to be the first one to wake up. She would then dress herself up in the fastest way that she could so that he would not see what they were actually doing. It would be an embarrassment if he did. Gu Shijio had made many assumptions about the situation that Di Fui might be trapped in. For example, she thought that he might be caught in a sea of flames or a siege surrounded by terrible beasts. He could have been injured too, perhaps by a creature or person who was more powerful. She also assumed that he would be trapped with Yin Qingluo. Maybe this was Yin Yanli's evil plan all the while, which led to an inevitable fight. Di Fui possessed great kung fu, but he might not be as powerful as Yin Yanli right now. Fortunately, he was definitely smarter. She believed that he was able to orchestrate careful strategies and keep himself safe. Anyone that was able to dominate a fight with him must be someone or something extraordinary and very unpredictable. All in all, she had made many assumptions about the worst kind of situation that he might be in. She was well prepared to get herself involved in a fight between life and death. Every possible scenario that she had conjured in her mind was the worst-case scenario. The path that guided her in was a visible mass of clouds. She had to go through many challenges to get near him at the end of the demanding course. To her utter surprise, she saw him sitting peacefully by a lake. It looked as if he was cultivating. Gusts of wind blew by her face, immersing her with a pleasant scent of fresh, blossoming flowers. The scenery was as spectacular, too beautiful to be absorbed all at once. From her point of view, the lake, the willows, the flowers, the greens, and the man had made up a beautiful painting in perfect tones and composition. She could not keep her eyes away. Gu Shizhou gazed at him with her fists clenched. She thought that he had left his body behind to come here and meditate. This must be one of his common practices, as the two guardians had clearly told her that the Devil King would sometimes leave his physical body and wander around with his soul. There he was sitting and cultivating. His incredible improvement must have something to do with his unique ways of practice. He seemed at ease. As for her, she was embarrassed by all that she had been through to get here. She still could not get over the fact that they were naked. She started blaming the firmament stone for tricking her into saving him. It had made the situation sound way worse, keeping her in suspense. In the end, the situation was the direct opposite of what she thought it to be. Speaking of which, Yin Qingluo was nowhere to be seen. If they had left their bodies behind together, they should be together with him, right? The firmament stone had clearly asked her before that no matter what they were doing, she would still step in and save him. Her answer might sound carefree, but she was actually a little worried. She was worried that they might be making love to one another when she came by, or that they were having some sweet little moments together. She was mentally prepared to witness that before her eyes. From the way the firmament stone asked her questions, she had already figured out that they would surely be together. However, she looked around and was overwhelmed by the slopes that were ablaze with flower blossoms and some dense trees. A white tent on the slope had caught her attention. Gu Shizhou could immediately tell that it was Di Fuyus. If he even had the time to make and secure a tent, he should be doing just fine. Perhaps, Yin Qingluo could be in the tent right now. Was this a part of Di Fuyus' date? Had he left his body behind and took her soul with him to go on a date in the wild? If that were the case, was it inappropriate for Gu Shizhou to be here? Gu Shizhou wanted to turn around and just leave. However, her reasoning stopped her from acting impulsively. She had been through a lot to be here, so she definitely needed to find out more about him before leaving. There she stood, contemplating if she should approach his tent using her teleportation technique to see if Yin Qingluo was in the tent. If she was really in there, then there was no need for Gu Shizhou to show up. She could find her way back just like how she came in and pretended nothing ever happened. She could also avoid the awkwardness since she would wake up first. She was caught in a daze when Di Fui turned around and saw her there. Gu Shizhou was still figuring out her next step, but it was all too late. Their eyes met. Her heart raced at that very moment. She had not had a clear view of his face, but she decided that she needed to stand her ground. "Mister, you look at ease here. It is such a carefree day." Gu Shizhou was relieved to see him all well and safe, but was also irritated at the back of her mind. A little bit of sarcasm would be appropriate to cover her embarrassment. Di Fui did not seem to respond in kind, however. The look in his eyes was rather stern, almost lethal. The icy look in his eyes made her skin creep. Gu Shizhou could almost feel his hatred. Troubled, she wondered if her presence was actually a disturbance. The look in his eyes was simply unforgiving. It was as if he wanted her dead. Obviously irritated, she gave him a tight smile and continued to bombard him with a series of ironic questions. "You must be here to practice. Perhaps, you are here with a friend? The body that you so impulsively left behind looked as good as dead. Your men were terribly worried as there was no way they could wake you up. They thought you were caught in some serious trouble. They asked for my help, right after I was done with the alchemy. I agreed to help, just as you have helped me many times before. Now that I know that you are safe, I should not be here to interrupt you anymore. You may proceed without me. Farewell. She was terribly embarrassed and was ready to leave right away. Also, she decided that she needed to give the firmament stone a lesson for tricking her about the situation. Gu Shijio. She could hear Difui's hoarse voice, calling out to her from afar. His voice sounded rough and harsh, like he was a bit unwell. However, he was still charming to her. Nevertheless, she could tell from his tone that he was somewhat dubious of her existence. Gu Shijio raised her eyebrow at him and nodded briefly. She did not use any facial disguise technique, so he should be able to recognize her just fine. Nonetheless, his expression clearly showed his disbelief. Was he surprised by her presence here in his space? Now that he had already seen her, Gu Shijio no longer felt the need to hide anything. She looked at him proudly and asked, "Why did you call me?" Slowly, Difui paced towards her. His grudge disappeared as soon as he could see her clearly. He was still gazing at her intensely. "Is it really you?" Gu Shijio was thoroughly confused. What kind of situation was this? Chapter 2409. Was something wrong with his memory? If she had a mirror with her, the first thing she would do was to take it out and have a look at herself to see what was really confusing him. Gu Shijio touched her face intuitively and realized that there was nothing wrong. She frowned at him and asked, "Are you all right?" Wait, you do not look very well." Gu Shijio finally noticed his pale complexion that would occasionally flush crimson. Also, his forehead was drenched in sweat. Before she knew what to do, she immediately teleported to his side and grabbed his wrist. "Let me check on you." Difui stood frozen and did not resist. He looked at her, and all he saw was her thick lashes. He then took a look at her puckered lips and her little finger that would naturally point upward every time she read his pulse. It was really her. She had made it here, surprisingly. It all happened so suddenly. Difui could not believe his eyes. At first, he thought that Yin Qingluo was finally smarter, and managed to imitate all of Gu Zijia's little movements to look more convincing. After all, Yin Qingluo had single-handedly created this illusion. Anything was possible right now. As her soft fingers were placed gently on his wrist, he could feel his blood rushing in excitement. He wanted to hold her tightly in his arms. However, he needed to identify if she was really Gu Shijio before making any approach. "Gu Shijio, when I was trapped in my father's wizardry barrier many years ago, you visited me and released a ferocious leopard to attack me. We even fought, and my clothes were burned. In the end, I only had my underwear," he slowly described, while gazing at her intensely. Gu Shijio was reading his pulse when he started reminiscing the past. She did not feel that it was the right time to do so, however. Was something wrong with his memory? Gu Shijio did not look up at him. "You did not get the facts right. The creature that I released was actually a black python. I remember it clearly because the python was the one that I personally captured. Also, when you lost all of your clothes, you were still wearing a band that managed to cover your tummy. It was not your underwear," she explained. After Gu Shijio managed to assess his condition, she finally looked up and met his big, shiny eyes. Her heart raced a little. It was all involuntary. All she had done was correct a couple of facts, so she did not understand why he had to stare at her so intensely, as if he had just hit the jackpot. From his pulse, she could tell that he was poisoned. Could the toxins have affected his emotions? He seemed to struggle to express himself. This poison was also new to Gu Shijio, so she needed to find out more about it in order to help him. She asked, "Which parts of your body are in pain?" All of a sudden, he gripped her wrist tightly and pulled her into his arms. He pulled her so hard that she almost hit her nose on his chest. "Ah, what are you trying to do?" Gu Shijio did not see it coming. Desperately, she tried to break free from his embrace. However, he did not intend to let her go. He tightened his arms around her, as if he had just found his savior. "Shijio, help me," he whispered into her ear. She could clearly feel his warm breaths. He could finally be sure about her identity. He had never told anyone about that particular incident, not even his parents, as it was not something he wanted to share. Only the two of them knew about it. Hence, he had no intention of holding back his desires any longer. He had all the reasons he needed to be with her. Shijio, I am not feeling well. His voice was trembling and full of pity. Gu Shijio was instantly overwhelmed by her maternal instinct. I am here for you. Be patient, and let me examine your condition. Once I know what is wrong, I can give you the correct medication, she stammered in response. His familiar breath on her skin and tight embrace made her heart pound in her chest. There is no need for examination, he added. His lips were almost touching her ear. I know the poison that has infected me. It is a love potion. It can only be cured if you and I perform the double physical and spiritual cultivation together. Difui tried to suppress his rising desire as he explained the situation to her as calmly as he could. He had been suppressing his desires for so long, and started to feel a sense of hopelessness. It was completely out of his expectations that she would show up in this place. His long-felt desire could finally be satisfied. The moment he could finally be sure that it was really her, he could no longer control his desires. The only thing he desperately needed was her body. Unfortunately, there were still many misunderstandings between them that remained unsolved. Since he knew her well, he was certain that she would push him away if he skipped the explanations. Gu Shijio was still shocked by Difui's revelation on the type of poison that had infected him. His words echoed in her ears and remained unprocessed. She was still trying to think it through. Did he say the love potion? Damn it. It could not be. Does he not have any way to resist it? How could he be so easily affected? She had not forgotten about their first night together. It happened all because of his consumption of an animal's penis, causing him to have a strong sexual urge. At that time, she had volunteered herself since she thought that they were engaged. But was she going to do it again? She only agreed before because she felt that it was part of her responsibility as his fiancé. She wanted to cling on to him as she was worried that he might leave her. This time, since he already found his other half, Yin Qingluo, she no longer felt the need to offer herself to him. With a strong push, she finally broke free from his embrace. Difui's body was strongly affected by the love potion, so he barely had enough spiritual power and strength left to stop her. He took many steps backward while trying to steady himself from falling into the lake. He looked at her in disbelief. Do you still not want me? Gu Shijio took a deep breath to try and calm down. Prince Nianma, if the double physical and spiritual cultivation is the only way to cure the toxins in your body, I am afraid that I am not the right candidate for the task. Keep it down for a moment, and I will look for Yin Qingluo. Her soul has also left the body, so she should be here with you. Where is she now? Let me get her here. She turned around and was ready to look for the woman who she thought should handle the job. If their souls had left their bodies at the same time, Yin Qingluo should not be too far away. It would not be a difficult search, she thought. Difui immediately grabbed her hand as soon as she turned away. This time, he held onto her hand so tightly that she could feel pain in her joints. Gu Shijio, are you really desperate to send me away? Won't you get jealous, picturing us doing the double physical and spiritual cultivation together? Gu Shijio was taken by surprise. Would she become jealous? She was certainly uncomfortable at the slightest thought of it. However, even though she found it hard to accept, it was the reality that she had to deal with right now. She is the one that you like, isn't she? I do not want to hinder you. She finally shared her thoughts after a long sigh. Is that why you chose to let go? Is it really so easy to let me go? Gu Shijio, we have been in love since our previous lives. How can you give up on me so easily? Difui made his point clear. He looked hurt by her response. Am I not worthy of your effort? Do you really have to give up on us because of some minor problem? Gu Shijio, I find your love hard to believe. If you loved me enough, you would not have let me go. Gu Shijio did not know what to say, but tears started rolling in her eyes. I did not give up on you. If you had not fallen for someone else, I would never have let you go. Chapter 24:11. I only want you to be happy. When you went missing, I never stopped looking for you for the entire year. Did you know that I had been to almost every corner of the Shura world? I entered each path with hope that simply turned into disappointment every time I left a city. Did you know how difficult it was for me to come here and look for you in the Devil Kingdom? We finally met after so long, and the first thing that you said to me was, "What are you doing here?" You even said that it was over between us. You treated Yin Qingluo with care and pampered her in every way possible. I could see that very clearly. Obviously, I thought you did not want me anymore. Those sorrowful moments re-emerged, so she had to hold back the tears in her eyes. It was you who changed your mind first. How could you blame it on me? Difui, you cannot be so unreasonable. She then raised her hand to wipe away the tears that streamed down her cheeks. I let you go because I want to make things easier for you. I only want you to be happy. It was evident that she cared very much about him. She only wanted him to live a happy and blissful life, which was why she had to let him go. She even tried to save Yin Qingluo despite losing out on the love of her life to that woman. Surely that showed how unconditional her love was toward Difui. How could he be so unreasonable? If Gu Shijie were an ordinary woman, she would probably just hit him the chest at that point. However, being the extraordinary person that she was, she wanted to kick Difui really hard right to show her resentment toward his actions. She wanted to make sure that he knew what she had been through for him. However, because he was still suffering from the love potion, so she decided to save the kicks for later. Shijie, your love is my biggest fulfillment. Difui disregarded her resistance and pulled her into his arms once again. You are the only one that I have ever loved, no one else. Yin Qingluo saved my life, so I treated her like a sister in return. We have never shared any form of intimacy. Gu Shijie was stunned by his comments. Could she believe what he said? She had seen and heard many things that were the opposite of what he claimed to have said. Furthermore, he led her to believe that those rumors were true. Shijie, you cannot judge the situation solely based on what you see. Sometimes, what you see may not necessarily be the truth. Perhaps, it is all but a show that is intended to deceive its viewers. You need to feel it with your heart and analyze the situation accordingly. Difui got to the bottom of it. He knew exactly what she was thinking of at that moment. Gu Shijie remained silent. By that response, Difui knew that she was finally listening and was a little relieved. The poison that she made was one of a kind. We needed the blood from her heart to entice the silver ring crocodile, and we needed her alive. She was brought here to make amends for her wrongdoings by helping you create the cure, he added. Gu Shijie was shocked. She gazed at him in astonishment. Was Yin Qingluo only here because they needed the blood from her heart? Was that the reason why Difui brought Yin Qingluo here? Flashbacks started to hit her as she recalled the situation when Difui finally drove the crocodile into taking the bait. Yin Qingluo was all tied up by Difui as soon as she arrived. Her clothes were untidy, and her complexion was as pale as a sheet. The situation back then was pretty dangerous. She had to focus on her fight with the crocodile, so she did not pay much attention to Yin Qingluo and thought that the crocodile injured her. Now that she started thinking about it, the little details seemed to prove that Difui was actually telling the truth. She never knew that the blood from Yin Qingluo's heart was needed to bait the crocodile. For ordinary people, they would probably lose their lives if blood was drawn in such a manner. Yin Qingluo was an exception, as her practice in kung fu and cultivation managed to save her life. Despite her abilities, the procedure still had to be conducted with special tools as a precautionary measure. Gu Shijie finally understood why Difui had been so protective of Yin Qingluo. He needed to take the blood from her heart to get the cure for Gu Shijie. So he needed to make sure that she was alive by keeping her out of danger. She finally understood his intention. She was smart enough to figure out the rest of the story from there, though she did not know how to feel about the situation. After a while, she suddenly asked, "Why did both of your souls leave the swamp together?" "I fell into her trap." Difui continued to enlighten her with a few details. He kept the story simple, but Gu Shijie was still quite surprised and equally disturbed upon hearing about all that he had been through. She had never expected that Yin Qingluo would be so obsessed with Di Fui. In order to be with Di Fui, there was no limit to the price that she was willing to pay. She would manipulate her soul, even her pride, just to get what she wanted. Gu Shijiu shook her head to dismiss the thought. She could not understand Yin Qingluo at all. Meanwhile, she also proceeded to check Di Fui's pulse to find out more about the poison. It was really one of a kind. She could not think of any cure other than the double physical and spiritual cultivation. Once she was sure of his condition, she was surprised by the sudden emergence of a red wooden bed next to her. It looked quite solid and spacious enough for two of them to spend the night together. Then he continued to show her to the side of the bed and sat her down. Their bodies were leaning against one another at the time. He held her tightly at the waist, and Gu Shijiu could immediately feel the warmth of his hand. His body temperature was abnormally high. She looked up, and their eyes locked in an intense gaze. Upon observing him more carefully, she realized that he started sweating more profusely than before. "What else do you want to know? Ask me everything. I will tell you everything that I know," he added smilingly. He smiled at her sweetly, but Gu Shijiu was quite terrified by the immense desire in his eyes. It was as if she were a little prey that he would soon indulge in. She involuntarily shivered a little, while trying to avoid his eyes. "Nothing. Nothing else," she murmured. "Great." Relieved, Di Fui gave her another charming smile. He then put her down on the bed. "So, will you be helping me with the cure?" Di Fui asked the question courteously, but what he did was the complete opposite. He lay on top of her, seemingly taking the lead. His eyes were still filled with a burning desire, as if telling her that she had no way to escape from him this time. Gu Zijia's heart throbbed with excitement, and her face flushed crimson. She could clearly feel his erection since he was lying on top of her. I actually think there is another way to help you cure the toxins. I think that there should be another way." She spoke rather unconfidently. "Baby, this is the only way. It is the easiest and the most effective way, surely." Gu Shijiu did not know how to answer him anymore. "About that," she hesitantly added. The thought of their first night together came to her mind. Now that he was poisoned, he would definitely be wilder than before. Would she feel pain or pleasure? She gulped nervously, but there was nothing she could do to change the situation. He was already kissing her intensely. "Shijiu, I cannot hold it back anymore." The next second, her clothes were completely torn apart, and he started to shower her with kisses everywhere. "Shijiu, I am really glad that you came." Gu Shijiu finally stopped struggling and started embracing him tightly. Meanwhile, she could not help but think about the firmament stone. She finally understood what it meant when it said that she was the only one who could save him. Indeed, she had come a long way to surrender herself to him. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.